I will start in the interests of punctuality. Firstly, I'd like to, on behalf of Council, acknowledge the Wadawurrung, traditional owners of this land, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to City Hall, and thank you very much for coming. Come to the final meeting of the year. It's flown, so the next meeting will officially be 2020. That's a scary thought. I'll take the opportunity now to say Merry Christmas in advance as well. Now, we have a blockbuster agenda tonight, and it will be an important one for all of us, councillors included, to keep to time, just to make sure our meetings are engaging as ever, for those of you in the gallery and also for everybody watching at home. Now, I think there's a few comments I'd like to make in the context of the questions, but I think we'll wait until the question time and see how we go with that one. Firstly, I'll move into apologies. Do we have any apologies to note this evening? No. Leave of absence. Okay, there's quite a list here. Am I allowed to request leave of absence for myself? Okay, so requesting that leave of absence be granted to Councillor Stephanie Asher from the 24th to the 26th of January 2020. Moved Councillor Grisbeck, seconded Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? Thank you. And against, carried. Leave of absence be granted to Councillor Jim Mason from the 23rd of December 2019 to the 19th of January 2020. Moved Councillor Sullivan. I'll second that. Councillor Asher. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. Leave of absence be granted to Councillor Anthony Aitken from the 26th of December up to and including the 4th of January 2020. Moved Councillor Contell, seconded Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. That leave of absence be granted to Councillor Sarah Mansfield from 26th of January to the 14th of February for a fairly important reason. Moved by Councillor Aitken, seconded Councillor Grisbeck. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. That leave of absence be granted to Councillor Bruce Harwood from the 20th of December 2019 to the 5th of January 2020 and from the 19th of January to the 26th of January 2020. Moved by Councillor Mason, seconded Councillor Murray. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. Okay, confirmation of minutes. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the council meeting held on the 26th of November 2019. Moved Councillor Grisbeck, seconded Councillor Harwood. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. We'll go back to the absences. In my absence, I'd like to appoint, that's for the 3 days in January, I'd like to appoint an acting mayor, and I would like to appoint Councillor Kylie Grisbeck, Deputy Mayor, as the acting mayor during that period. May I have somebody to move? Councillor Mason, seconded Councillor Sullivan. Thank you very much. That's now official. So we'll have an official acting mayor, which will be fabulous. Okay, declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for tonight?
We'll be raising one in a notice of motion later this evening.
Councillor Harwood. If any others arise during the meeting, please do let me know. Okay. Public question time and submission time. So the next agenda item is public question and submission time. It's specifically available for questions and submissions rather than as a forum for discussion. So we like to keep it quite tight so that everybody gets an opportunity to share their views and ask their questions. It does provide for each person addressing the council to speak for 3 minutes, and the total of question time and submission time will go for a maximum of 45 minutes in total. Questions and submissions provided in writing prior to the meeting are considered first, and after that everyone in the gallery will be given an opportunity to ask a question or make a submission. So that we can keep the meeting moving, please keep the questions as brief as possible. Discussion will only be entered into if clarification is required. We will try and keep our answers brief as well, and each person asking a question or making a submission is given 3 minutes to speak. So I may disallow some questions that have been previously asked and answered. Everyone's most welcome to come up and ask a question, have your say, but please stick to the time frame and try and avoid repeating what others have said. It's all about keeping the meeting going and giving everyone a fair go and really exploring the range of different options and different activities that the council has. So I will, first on the list, invite Christy Hall, if Christy's in the audience this evening in the gallery. No, Christy? Okay, anybody who has given us a question in writing does receive a reply in writing as well. Okay, Barry White. Do we have Barry tonight in the gallery? Welcome, Barry.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors, and for the opportunity to ask a question. A simple question, where is the Lara Traffic Management Plan? But put this into a context. This process started in 2017, July 2017, when the administrators were managing council. We raised a series of issues to do with heavy trucks, in particular from the quarries at the back of the Uyanks through Lara, problems with the crossing at Lara, McClelland Avenue rail crossing, which is becoming increasingly congested, problems with capacity at the rail car park. We're running out of room, as people would probably already know. We've also had issues with McClelland Avenue and requests for speed limits, and we note recently with the publication of where speed limits have been requested, McClelland Avenue doesn't figure. More recently, we've to add to that particular list, and they're key issues for us at the present time. There's also the issue of the jail expansion, the Barwon prison expansion, where we expect significant numbers of vehicles, and we're talking of hundreds of vehicles, now coming through Lara from the Princess Highway to the new prison. So that's going to add to the traffic load. Now our concern is this has been on the go since mid-2017. We haven't had a document presented to us that looks like a plan, and we are most concerned about the progress with this whole exercise. We've gone through the right process, we've been patient, we've actually met with the departments concerned, but frankly, we haven't seen anything at this stage that looks like an acceptable Lara traffic management plan. Before I came tonight, I had a look at the Lara structure plan, 2002. Exactly the same issues were raised back in 2002, and nothing was actually done about those particular issues either. So we are concerned. We would like to have a response. We believe we deserve a response, and we hand it back to you.
Thank you for the question, Barry. I will throw to our Director of City Services, Guy Wilson-Brown, for this one.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Barry, for your question, and I guess also acknowledge your passion on this issue and your contribution over a long period of time, and particularly to yourself and the TLC group. We do acknowledge that the process has gone on for some time, but we are heading in the right direction and getting close to resolution. The final Lara study plan will be presented to Council first meeting of the new year. We've had over 300 submissions, so we're carefully working through all those, and of course yourself, including all those issues that you've just raised. Between now and the final plan being presented to Council, we are happy to meet with yourself and your group to give you more of an update on how we've considered some of those submissions and give you a better idea of what the final plan will look like. I can give you some good news with respect. You mentioned McClelland Avenue. We have actually had approval of that speed limit reduction, so we'll be able to announce when those new speed limits signs are going in place. And in fact, we've had some positive news, I think, on the bulk of the speed limit reductions associated with the lower traffic plan. So that's where we're at, Madam Mayor. And as I've just said to Barry before, happy to meet with himself and his group at any time, and between now and Christmas particularly. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we just highlight, we are looking at a 10-year plan, not one for next week. So we look forward to that outcome from your report. Thank you.
Bringing the question to us, Barry. Okay, next we have a question from Erica Hunt. Is Erica in the audience with us tonight?
Caroline Danaher, and I'm reading for her.
Thank you, Caroline.
If I can
We all know about phone dependency.
wasting time. Apologies. Right, Erica's question that I'm reading for her, as she was unable to come. At November's council meeting, Josie Horn from the City of Greater Geelong Youth Council addressed council and made recommendations as junior mayor. Josie, as co-host of the Youth Summit, asked the audience whether they wanted a climate emergency declaration, and she saw not a single hand not go up. 95% of respondents stated they are in favour of COAG declaring a climate emergency. Josie said, and I quote, "These facts are irrefutable, and Geelong's youth need a recognition of the climate crisis by our representatives so we can act accordingly. Youth Council are aware that Council voted against this, but we strongly urge Council to reconsider by their position. We can no longer be blissfully ignorant and ignore facts. A climate emergency declaration is imperative for the prosperity of all people." Josie then urged and implored Council to declare a climate emergency. Mayor Asher, you have continued to ignore the world's best experts and evidence-based research. You are still ignoring our community, its children, and jeopardising our safety and future. My question is, what are you going to do to address Josie and the youth's concerns and plea for a climate emergency declaration? Are you silencing them too and ignoring their climate questions also? And the question 2 is, what is Council going to do to address the ecological crisis and 6 mass extinction at local government level? So that's Erica's question. I would like to, if I may, I've bought, as this time of Christmas, I've bought trees. Apparently you can't accept them. That's fine. I'll leave them here to do with what you like. But I've got one from Bellarine. I've got one for all the councillors from Bellarine Landcare. They are Indigenous, and I'd like to read the note that I've written to every single person, the same one, to Mayor Stephanie Asher. This one says, and it's from Fridays for Future and Thrive for Future, and we stand outside Council every Fridays to remind all of us, not just Council. I feel myself to blame more so because I'm older than many other people. Fridays for Future and Thrive for Future wish you a happy Christmas with your families and friends. We give it in memory of the fires and the existential crisis we face, and for the people who still deny this fact. It's a Banksia marginata. Sylvia Banksia is Indigenous to the area, sourced from Bellarine, Landcare, Belchers Road, Drysdale. You may return it for something else, or you may keep it in a pot, and it grows to 6 to 10 metres, or you can give it to a friend, or you can do whatever you may wish to do it for it, but it comes with an attempt to sort of be, conciliatory, because you guys and we have to get along and we have to work it out together and not ignore things. So I would like to, I was in the middle of putting them in here because I want my basket back, if you don't mind. But I'll leave them there, and there's one for every councillor. So I wish you a very happy Christmas, all of you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. That's very kind of you, and I do greatly appreciate the extension of a goodwill gesture, and I will enjoy planting my 6 to 8, 10-metre tree on my nature strip. See how that works for the City of Greater Geelong. Look, I will absolutely reassure you that we are, as a council, dedicated to addressing the consequences of climate change in the region. I'm really pleased to say that the city is well on the way with developing the sustainability framework, and that is aiming to identify urgent ways to tackle the impacts. We've also agreed to join the Climate Council's Cities Power Partnership Program, as promised, and write to state and federal environment ministers, thank you, Sonia, to advocate for significant action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The city's involved in countless other programs as well, and initiatives to reduce the region's carbon emissions, such as the Our Coast program and strategies including the Environment Management Strategy, the Zero Carbon Emissions Strategy, and the Community Zero Carbon Action Plan. So as a councillor group, we are very committed to responding to climate change. We will continue to monitor and share the city's progress against the climate change initiatives, and the sustainability framework is all about setting us up to really actually act on climate change action. So looking forward to that. With question 2, I think I will throw to Guy Wilson-Brown about the ecological impacts, and perhaps you could have a go at answering that one, Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Council's, I guess, environment strategy is the overarching document that details all our initiatives with respect to what we're doing to care for our environment and ecological systems. It includes things like the Hooded Plover Conservation Action Plan as well, and the environment strategy also provides a link to our climate change adaptation strategy, which is an incredibly important document, as well as our climate change adaptation toolkit. Early in the new year, we're commencing the process of developing a new environment strategy, which will put further emphasis and weight to all those initiatives. And as part of that, we'll also be refreshing our climate change adaptation strategy and the climate adaptation toolkit. So, as the Mayor's just mentioned, we do have a lot of strategies and actions in place, including our commitment to the 10 principles of One Planet, and a couple of other significant projects that Council's recently endorsed in terms of the replacement of all our street lights with LED lighting. That's a $13 million investment over 3 years. That will see a 15% reduction in our carbon emissions, as well as our recent signing up to a renewable purchasing agreement, which within the next 12 months will see Council move to 100% purchasing of green power. So there is an awful lot going on. It's a significant priority for Council, but as I said earlier on, we will be refreshing our environment strategy early in the new year so that the whole community will get a chance to have further input into the direction and the key priorities for the next 12 months and years to come. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Guy. Now, I have a question here as well from Sanya Van Hewitt.
I would like to echo Caroline's sentiments that we do need to work together, and I really will continue to be here every meeting because I want to have a council that I'm proud of, and I know that it's slow, long steps that you're taking, but I've got to be an agitator. I'm really sorry. So I'm going to agitate again today. And I want to thank the Council that I was invited to the Sustainability Framework Community Consultation last week, which was quite enlightening. It represented a lot of different groups in sustainability, not just the environmental action groups. It was really interesting that unanimously the groups that were there expressed a lack of confidence in Council progressing any further forward in terms of climate action. It was a very interesting thing to talk to people that I haven't actually met before and who are not in climate action but had not a lot of really very nice things to say about where progress was going. And it was because it's really not very visible. And they, to 100%, and whoever was there from Council would agree, everybody there voted that Council should declare a climate emergency. And this is not just the Climate Action Group. I have to stress that. So one of the things that I was thinking about is that how are you going to get your the confidence from your municipality back? I'm going to have to say we've got to get rid of this One Living Planet thing. And the things like the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy is a much more solid. It's got it's an international. It's got a big groundswell of accountability, and I think that might go a long way, or something like that, in terms of being accountable to people. You've got to stop answering all of our correspondence with the same old stuff, because it actually doesn't agree with the things that you say in council chambers. We get these wonderful, yes, we've done this, yes, we've done that, yes, we've done that in the correspondence, but I've heard council say here that no, we haven't actually done enough. No, we have, and this was especially on the time that the climate emergency was being declared. There was a number of comments from councillors that not enough had been done, and we're going to be working towards that. But we still get the same rhetoric in the printed material that's returned to us from questions. And the third thing is, I would really like to see the correspondence from councillors to council, and also I would like to see the brief for the framework, to see what has actually been asked as the framework for it. And I've been asking for that for a couple of weeks now, and I know it's a really hard basket, but I would like to know what the framework request is from council for the independent consultancy group that's been commissioned.
Thank you, Sonia, and good questions. And I do, again, appreciate the more collaborative approach. It's much easier for us when we're all working together and pulling on the same rope. I'll start with question 3 and work backwards and probably throw question 1 through to Guy, if that's okay. With regard to the brief, we're more than happy to provide a copy of the scope for the development of the framework. We can do that. We can't provide detail of correspondence between sort of suppliers and providers and council, but we can definitely provide the scope. Yep, that's fine. Regarding the response to correspondence, noted, understand that, and it is something that I think is difficult to explain is from the point of view of the Local Government Act, we're not actually in a position to interfere with operations and direct officers. So it's always a balance between, you know, how much is the response from individual councillors and how much is the response from the City of Greater Geelong officers, and where their expertise and they're dealing with the day-to-day, then we leave it to them. But they're often guided too by how we relate to the community, because we are essentially community representatives. So noted in terms of the content and tone, and we'll certainly look at that as well. And as for the first question, I think I will handball that one to Guy Wilson-Brown, which is the One Planet Living commitment, and there was another. What was the other part of that question, please, Sonia? Reviving public confidence. Yeah.
I'm restoring that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, you know, we have a very passionate environment team, and we do a lot of work, as you're probably aware, with the environment groups and representatives of the community. I guess I haven't seen that the loss of confidence that you're talking about. From what I've seen, that the community does recognise, supports us and works with us in all initiatives that we are doing. And, you know, of course we can do a lot more, but this council is leading local government in terms of its response to climate change and environmental sustainability. And we're continuing to make it a major focus. As said in the previous question, I guess I outlined a whole range of initiatives, including new ones that are coming up, such as the Purchasing Power Agreement and the LED light replacement. And, you know, the Our Coast work that we've done as well, you know, has been award-winning. So I think when you actually look at the things we're doing, putting aside the politics around a climate change emergency, you know, I think you will see that we are doing a lot. And if we continue to work together, there's a lot more that we can achieve. So I think I'll probably leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I think you're exactly right. We do need to communicate better the great things that the team do. So thank you. It's good motivation to do so. Thank you.
Merry Christmas to everybody. Safe holidays if you're not Christian, and all the best.
Tanya.
Madam Mayor, could I just make a couple of comments just as the environmental portfolio holder?
Absolutely.
Sonia, thank you for coming up today and ask a few questions. I know I may seem like an unlikely portfolio holder for this area of council, but I'm really looking forward to the next 12 months ahead. And I'm trying to educate myself as quickly as I possibly can. I attended the Geelong Sustainability function that they held last week down in Warm Ponds. It was a fantastic event. I was really quite surprised by the different industries that were also represented that night. And the discussion around the circular economy and fashion, making fashion circular as well was an excellent discussion. The discussion on solar battery bulk buy was excellent. And I thought all of the communication that I had on that night was extremely positive. I've since had my first environmental portfolio meeting with our officers. And one of the things that I've put to our officers is, if we declared a climate emergency today, what do you need? What do we need to do tomorrow? Don't hold back on bringing that forward. If we need funding in the budget, I want to know about it now. And if it was an emergency, then let's act like it's an emergency. And if it is an emergency, let's continue to act like it's an emergency and tell me what we need to do so that we can help as councillors to bring these matters forward. I'm not suggesting I'm any expert, because I'm not, but I'm going to try to work as hard as I can in this portfolio. happy to make my contact details available, and if you care to educate me further, I'm willing to learn and to engage with whatever group chooses to engage with me.
Your comments, I appreciate that, and thank you very much, councillors. And looking forward to working together.
Thank you, Tanya. I think we also have a question from Lionel McWilliam. Is Lionel in the gallery? Welcome, Lionel.
Councillors, Madam Mayor, my question to the Council is about the proposed new fire station in Lara, which is the second fire station in Lara. And this one is to separate the CFA from the permanents. So, anyway, originally to be sited on the corner of Caddies Road and Windermere Road, we now believe it will be located at 147 to 153 Windermere Road, Lara. So which is it to be? And who knows what? If it's located at 147 and 153 Windermere Road, this will create an extreme environmental problems for Serendip Sanctuary and Serendip Creek. Serendip Creek is a flood-prone area. If all the soil that is now on the said land is levelled out to even up the land, it will create future flooding problems, and it will happen to other properties abutting the creek. But the most serious environmental problem of all will be if there is any runoff at all from the proposal to run into Serendip Creek, which in turn runs into Hovels Creek and then runs to the Ramsar wetlands on the edge of the bay. There must not be any washing water from vehicles of any description to be allowed to flow into the creek. There must be an independent, not council, environmental study, e.g. EPA and Corangamite Catchment Authority. If this is a state government initiative, it must be stopped in its tracks and moved to another location. We have all seen what happens when contaminated water gets into environmentally threatened creeks and the noise factor which will affect the animals in Serendip Sanctuary, which we have been trying to protect from inappropriate development around its boundaries for many years. This is a very sensitive area and people and government departments do not undertake duty of care for these areas. There is a total lack of local consultation. There are many questions to be answered as to how this proposal has come about and what the consequences will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. That's an excellent question. Councillor Aitken seems to want to go for an answer.
I'm happy to actually answer some of that. Councillor Gresbeck and I have been approached by members of the Lara community on this particular issue. What we've been advised from the officers is that there is no application being presented to council yet in terms of a planning permit for that particular site. We asked the question if a emergency services or CFA facility was to be built at the address that you've mentioned, 147 Windermere Road, what were the planning process would actually be. And we've, Kylie and I have been advised that a application would require a permit, and the permit would have to go through the normal processes and advertising for that. And the reason being is that the land at 147 Windermere Road is listed as rural living zone, and it does require a permit for an emergency services facility such as a CFA fire brigade. So until council actually receives anything informally or formally, at this point in time, I'm under understanding that we've received nothing, and I think the Director of Planning can make a comment on that as well too, please. Yeah.
Councillor Aitken. Gareth?
Through the mayor, Councillor Aitken is 100% correct. It certainly would be subject to a planning permit in the...
If it's taken over by the state government and the planning minister, Mr. Wynne, calls it in or changes it because it's a government proposal, then what chance have we got? And it's very sensitive. A lot of people in the area know about it, irrespective of whether you know about it or not, and it's come from inside the services themselves. They seem to know about it. So it's going to pick its head up, you know. So I'm just making it aware that this area is totally inappropriate for it. And also to the people who have bought houses on that new estate around there. To coin a phrase, I smell a rat. So just be aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. Do we have any other questions or submissions from the gallery? questions? Please. Give us your name when you sit down, that would be terrific. Thanks. Know the feeling.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. My name's Glenda McNaughton. I live at 164 to 168 Wyndham Street, Drysdale, and I live on land that the council proposes to destroy my house on in order to make a drain. My question is addressed tonight to Councillor Trent Sullivan in his capacity as chairperson of the Council's Planning Committee. It concerns the Council's approach to social equity around planning issues, and I'm using the Council's proposed planning amendment 363, C363, which is the amendment that affects my house directly. How much time and resources have council officers spent with interested property developers in drafting planning amendment C363, that's hard to get out, to assist its passage through the planning approval process? How much time and resources have they spent with the 63 objectors to C363 in drafting their objections to prevent its passage? And do these comparative figures support the officers' statement in their report to tonight's meeting that the amendment has appropriately considered social equity principles? Where is the equity in the disproportionate use of council officers' time for developers and for your constituents, people like me and people in my area who object to this proposal?
Thank you for your question, Glenda. I'll step in here because we're going to debate this issue tonight, so technically Councillor Sullivan can't answer the question now, but if you're prepared to sit for a little while in the gallery, we will be debating that issue tonight. So thank you very much for putting your views forward.
And my question will be directly addressed during that debate?
It may be.
So what's the point of asking it if it's not going to be addressed?
You'll receive a reply in writing if it doesn't get addressed tonight. Thank you, Glenda.
Mayor and councillors, my name's Mercedes Drummond. I live at 63 to 65 Country Club Drive, Clifton Springs, and I'm the president of the Drysdale Clifton Springs Kaluas Association. My question is addressed to Councillor Trent Sullivan in his capacity as the chairperson of the Council's Planning Committee. It concerns the Council's approach to social equity around planning issues and uses the Council proposed planning amendment C363 as an illustration. In their report for tonight's meeting, council officers state that C363 has appropriately considered social equity principles. Do you agree with them in light of the fact that they have changed C363 in response to objections by 21 residents of Marsh Court, but rejected a further 42 objections, including 6 from community associations across the Bellarine Peninsula, representing the views of hundreds of your constituents?
Thank you for your question, Mercedes. The same response applies, I'm afraid. We will be debating that topic tonight, so Councillor Sullivan can't actually answer your question now. But thank you for bringing it forward, and I think if you wait, you'll be interested to hear the debate. Welcome.
Good evening all. My name's Patrick Hughes. I live at 164 to 168 Wyndham Street, Drysdale, that the council wants to destroy to make way for a drain. My question tonight is addressed to Councillor Sullivan in his capacity as chairperson of the council's planning committee. It concerns the council's use of independent experts in planning issues, and it uses the council's proposed planning amendment C363 as an illustration. Do you think it's acceptable, Councillor, for council officers to reject the professional advice of an independent hydrological consultant that a drainage basin could be created on our property 5 metres from our home without destroying it, yet accept unquestioningly the assertion by the developer driving C363 that it could be 17 years before such a drainage basin on our property is needed? Do you also think, Councillor, that it's acceptable for council officers to state that our home should be destroyed because it would be less than 15 metres from the proposed drainage basin, despite several houses in the neighbouring Curlewis estate being less than 15 metres from a drainage basin.
Patrick, same response applies. Unfortunately, I know Councillor Sullivan's desperate to answer your question, but he can't. I'm afraid we have to wait till the item is debated further on.
I hope that you'll call on him to answer the questions during the
Indeed.
time.
Thank you very much. Okay, welcome. I believe you may have a petition as well. Is that correct? Wonderful. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Frankie. I'm 9 years old, and I'm really passionate about the environment and the future of it. And a while ago, I made this petition, which was a big project for me. And I really just want to stop recycling going into landfill. And this has been life-changing for me, as I've managed to get 217 signatures of people that have the same concern of me. My generation is going to be if we don't stop this, my generation is going to be the one that has to have the power and the voice to speak up to the world and make a change. But it can't just be us. It has to be the whole of Geelong, the whole of Victoria, the whole of even Australia. We got to make this work. It can be a small step for us, but a big step for our future. I'm one voice, but there's many out there that's like me. Please, be one of them. Thank you for the opportunity of letting me speak.
Thank you very much, Frankie. Well done. Frankie wrote to me earlier in the week, and I suggested that she come in and do what a lot of people are too frightened to do, is come in and address the council. I think you've done a fantastic job. Thank you. The great news is curbside recycling starts again next Monday. So that's fantastic. And I think everybody's been devastated that the recycling's been going to landfill. So it's fantastic that you've managed to collect 217 signatures. That's an amazing effort. I might ask Guy if he'd like to add some good news to the whole recycling story, because we do have a lot of activity going on in that space, and we've got some great news happening.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Frankie. And I urge you, to continue to be involved, and your friends as well. It's incredibly important, for the health of the planet and the environment that we continue to find ways of getting better at recycling. You may or not be aware, but it's on the agenda tonight. It's actually the first agenda item, so hopefully you can stay around and listen to the discussion. But we have a draft waste and resource recovery strategy out for comment at the moment. That will be out for comment until first week in January. It's a 10-year strategy that outlines what this council intends to do to get better at waste management and recycling, including things like trialling food waste. You might be aware that roughly a third of landfill is actually food that should be recycled or put to other purposes. So that's going to be a key part of our strategy moving forward. Other things like getting glass out of the recycling stream as well, and also looking at how we can actually build a processing facility for that food waste as well. There are lots of exciting things that we're going to be doing in the next year. And congratulate you on coming along this evening. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Councillor Murray, he would like to have a word or two as well.
Excuse me, Frankie.
I'm 9 years old.
What school do you go to?
Hatton Primary School.
I just want to add my voice, or it's now a loud voice now, to what you've said tonight. You're very, very impressive, and if that's your dad sitting there and mum, they must be very proud. And we have a junior council here. We've just completed the first year of our junior council. So you might be a bit young for it, but in a few years' time, if you're still as passionate as you are tonight, you have a look at our junior council, and I hope to see you in a few years' time in our junior council. Well done.
Well said, Murray, and well done, Frankie. Excellent. And that's a good segue into the fact that the Junior Council applications are open at the moment. So go to the website, anybody, and frankly, it's probably worth your while having a look so that you know how to fill out the application form in a couple of years. That would be great. So well done. Are there any more questions, comments, submissions from the gallery? One more? Thank you. We're running quite well to time. Well done.
I also have a petition as well. My name's Jan Calaby. I live in at 135 Russells Road in Mountainee. I'd like to thank the Mayor and the councillors for giving me the opportunity to present this petition to the Council regarding the proposed female drug rehabilitation facility at 120 Russells Road, Mountainee. The petition is from 130 local residents and many users of the recreation reserve, asking that this proposed amendment be abandoned. Whilst everyone acknowledges the need for such a female drug rehabilitation facility in Geelong, we do not believe this is an appropriate site as it is located on a public reserve used by young children, many lone women and families. It is on a dead-end gravel road in a fire-prone area and the land size is too small. We live right across the road. I do know how often there are single women over there walking their dogs and riding their horses. The vegetation on this site is endangered grassy woodland, which should be protected under the City of Greater Geelong's biodiversity strategy. With the Armstrong Creek and Williams Road developments so close, new residents will be looking at this reserve for green space and recreation facilities in the not-too-distant future, and the drug rehabilitation facility would be at the main entrance to the reserve. Has the Council considered assisting Foundation 61 to find an alternative site which is closer to services and medical facilities and incorporating 120 at least Russells Road into the reserve? I should point out the church on that piece of land burnt down 70 years ago, and I suspect councils looked after the land for the last 70 years. They certainly have since we moved there about 30-odd years ago. I think probably it's regarded by everybody as part of the reserve. I think it's a tragedy to be losing that bit of land.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for taking the time to get a petition together. Gareth, would you like to respond in some way?
Yeah, thank you, Jan, for the comments and the petition you've raised. Obviously, it's been out for community consultation, as you mentioned. We'll be reviewing that the feedback through officers and actually presenting that to the council in the new year. My understanding, though, it is private land, public land.
Owned by the church.
Yeah, so it's certainly not public open space, but I understand, I guess your point was around, I guess it's been maybe perceived as that to be open space. So obviously the current owners have the right and have the opportunity to put forward the proposal that's before the council they'll consider in the new year.
Thank you, Gareth, and thank you, Jan. Councillor Pat.
I'd just like to thank you for your petition. I'd just like to say that listening carefully to all of the points raised of why this could or could not be a suitable site, I think those particular matters could be addressed in every other site that I could think of. The same matters that have been raised, almost identical matters that are raised every time this subject comes up. And I think the community are looking at a very serious problem here in drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and sooner or later the community need to take charge of this, and I'll be very strongly advocating that the community takes responsibility for this, like all other responsibilities across the world need to do. And while I sympathise that it may be close to a particular set of residents in this case, if it's built somewhere else it'll be next to some other residents and so on and so forth. The overwhelming principle here is this is a community issue and community needs to take charge of it and community needs to help solve it. So I look very much forward to the discussion in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mountainee. Noted. Thank you, Jan. Appreciate that. Petition will be collected by Jake. Thank you, Jake. So that's our time for question time. We'll now move into Section B, the reports part of the evening. And first item on the agenda Following straight on from Frankie's submission is the Waste and Resource Recovery Strategy. So we have this one moved by Councillor Nelson and seconded Councillor Harwood. Thank you, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you all know, I'm new to the portfolio, so it's good to come out with some exciting news. And I wanted to thank Frankie personally. I'm a Highton resident myself, so I just wanted to say, with regard to recycling, and we all think it's a good thing to do recycling, and in the past we all thought we were doing the right thing, yet the reality was we were sending it all to China, and that's not acceptable in anyone's language. So more than happy to come up to the school with Guy, if you'll accept my invitation as well, and have a chat to you guys at school at Highton Primary there. I know you do a lot of good work up there. I've been there many times with the old Vice Principal, who's now in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City. So more than happy to come up and speak to the children there about any of their questions with regard to waste and resource recovery. So back onto the report. I apologise, Madam Mayor. But this report, as Guy said, sends us through to the next 10 years. It'll be out for consultation. It has been out for consultation and will be out for further consultation for another few weeks. And this will guide us as to how we, the city and community, manage waste and recycling for the next 10 years. And as Guy said, some of those actions in the strategy include food organics. If you can't have your own compost at home, certainly council will look to dispose of those food waste rather than putting them in landfill in other ways that are better for the environment. I was recently out at the Green Organics facility, council's own Green Organics facility, last week. I went out there on my birthday with Guy, and who was very under the weather himself. So it wasn't a day that both of us probably should have been there, but that's how important that we see things for Geelong, and it's great that Geelong Council actually owns that facility, and we're trying to make the green organics, what we put in our green bin, recyclable, which is great to see council doing that. I don't know any other councils around this, certainly this municipality, that actually does that. So we look forward to further investment by the state government with regard to waste. And in particular, I'll be advocating for a container deposit scheme. As most of the older people in here, certainly my age and above, we used to recycle our glass and cardboard and take our glass in and get more filled containers of soft drink and things back. And we don't do that anymore, and we certainly should be doing that. So I'll be advocating for certainly for a container deposit scheme and for stronger packaging guidelines from the federal government. Too many times we get our Barbie dolls and our other things that we buy, and they're covered in plastic, and we need to advocate for the federal government to look at that issue, because it is really an issue, the stuff that we bring into our homes. But I'll have a bit more to chat a bit later. I just want my fellow councillors to have a few words, so thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Nelson. Anyone else want to talk about? Councillor Aitken.
Very much.
Oh, sorry, second. Sorry, I was thinking you were reserving the right.
Just trying to turn. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
You're on, Councillor Harwood.
Thanks. Thank you, Frankie, for coming along this evening. I have an 8-year-old granddaughter who shares your views, so you two are on the same wavelength. And she's not backward in coming forward and letting me know what she thinks, so it's good to see her to come into the chamber. This is a really important strategy that we're looking to put out to the community to take more feedback. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion over a long period of time now in relation to waste and resource recovery strategies by virtue of not having that capacity when we've actually lost our recycling facilities. So we now see that coming back into operation in the very near future now, which is great, but we still have to remember markets need to be created for where our waste actually ends up going. It's great to recycle, it's great to have all these facilities, but we also have to be smart in actually what we still do with the end product, be it glass, plastic, whatever it might be. So that's important to understand that, we will be recycling, but we also need to be, as I say, clever in what we actually do with that particular product. So FOGO, which has been touched on, the food organic, green organic processing, which ultimately will turn into a fertiliser of some sort, which is a good strategy that the council's engaged in. Importantly, we have the state government engaging in a circular economy discussion. And I think the paper was due soon, if not yesterday, but we're still waiting to receive that information from the state government, which will be a very strong driver for our strategy, and will no doubt form a lot of the conversation around what we're going to do. And I think we've had some feedback as to what can be in that particular document and how that will affect us. And I think things like the container deposit scheme, which has been touched on. We're the only state in Australia that doesn't have that. So that's an interesting discussion as to why we don't have that when it's a proven strategy for resource recovery and reduction of waste around our communities. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but waste to energy is something that you just can't dismiss immediately without looking at what it may or may not bring to a particular waste strategy. So that also has to form part of the discussion in some capacity. I think our first item we would request would be another MRF, another municipal recycling facility for the region. I think would be very important given the growth that we're experiencing, particularly in the south, and we know what's coming in the north with our northern western zone. So another MRF will be essential for us in the near future. I think it's also a great opportunity to reopen our education facility, our waste education facility, which we have down in North Geelong, which has been closed for some time, and we've managed to fill it with rubbish. So I think that'd be two good steps there to clean it out and actually get it back into use, which what it is designed for. And I think to do that, we can lean on the state government with our landfill levy, again, to make application for some of those funds to go back into education, which I think would be a request that should be met with a positive response. And I just think, as a council, we can have all these discussions and all these meetings, but we actually can't do it on our own. We are simply just one of the drivers for the community. The community have to actually respond in a manner that's completely overwhelming to what they want to see occur. And I don't think anyone now is in any state of not knowing what it means when you can't deal with your waste properly. A lot of things can occur in a community that aren't good for the community, but I say this often, but if we don't deal with our waste correctly, it will have the biggest impact, probably bar anything else we could think of. A block a road or something can occur, but if you stop your waste collection and your waste recycling and actually dealing with your waste in a proper manner, that will always come back to have incredibly irreversible, damaging results. So I encourage the community to have input into the strategy. It's what we're seeking, but I think there's enough information out there now and enough avenues to that information for us to get a really strong document out in the future that we can actually take action on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Quite the wise person on waste is Councillor Harwood. Any other councillors? Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. This document I see is actually version 1 of the strategy because there's multiple other things that we need to do, and we need to grow this strategy as well too in terms of what's actually happening in this sector. This strategy was actually essentially put in place before the draft release of Infrastructure Victoria, and we're still waiting for the final report associated with Infrastructure Victoria. On the 27th of November, the Parliamentary Inquiry into Waste and Recycling in Victoria handed down its report and has some significant recommendations for the waste and recycling industry in Victoria, and also makes some national recommendations as well too. So I see that this strategy is actually just Mark 1, and it's actually, we need to continuously review this strategy in light of what's actually occurring in the sector. And just to give you an example of the Parliamentary Inquiry, there were 33 findings and 46 recommendations from that particular parliamentary report. And some of the things they did talk about and have highlighted by some of the other councillors, but they have endorsed that a container deposit scheme should be introduced into Victoria. That is actually policy of council as well too, where Councillor Gresbeck voted with the MAV requesting that a container deposit scheme actually be introduced in Victoria. They also talked about and made recommendations about the significant issue of chemical waste stockpiling that's occurring in Victoria as well too, and what regulation needs to occur. Interestingly, one of the major recommendations for local government was they actually said that the state should fund local government to introduce a bin specifically for glass recycling. So the Parliament of Victoria has actually said that's a significant issue, and the state government should be funding local councils to introduce a curbside collection system focused purely on glass. And I thought that was quite an interesting recommendation coming from the Parliament back down to local government. They also talked about and made recommendations about the state's sustainability fund, which has about $500 million sitting in it. And essentially the Parliament has said to the government that what they do need to do is actually have clear guidelines and understanding about how local government and other industry participants can actually access that funds and have a clear understanding of how that money could be spent. Interestingly as well too, they also spoke about a national landfill levy. I didn't realise until I read the parliamentary report that there's significant shift of waste around each of the states in Victoria because there isn't a uniform levy in terms of landfill. And I think that's totally unacceptable. I believe that if you make the waste, you should be responsible for the waste in your local area. And what is happening, there's a significant transferring of waste amongst states because of the no national focus. And they also said too that in the local government sector, which will influence Infrastructure Victoria's final report, the parliamentary report said there isn't a uniform recycling system in Victoria. And the cost efficiencies that could occur if there is some statewide recycling systems would bring major benefit to the community as well too. So I was very impressed with that particular parliamentary report. I actually encourage anybody that has an interest in waste and recycling to read that report and actually have a look at the recommendations. And I actually hope that when we develop version 2 of our strategy that we take on board a number of those recommendations in that parliamentary report, and when Infrastructure Victoria does present its final report in terms of where funding should be allocated in infrastructure for recycling and waste management, that we actually come up with version 3 of our waste and management strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Matt. Look, I'd support all the comments that have been made by my fellow councillors. I'd like to just congratulate officers on the work that was put into developing this strategy. There was a significant amount of consultation that took place in the development of this with a whole variety of stakeholders. Some councillors I know participated as well in some of the workshops, and they were really enlightening to be part of. As Councillor Harwood has noted, I guess waste is one of the environmental issues that people is more tangible for people, and certainly it's something that everyone is quite aware of, and when there are problems with it, they become apparent very quickly. And so it definitely generates a lot of passion within the community. I'd encourage people not only to look at the documents that Councillor Aitken highlighted, but this one, and provide us with some feedback, because that's what the aim is tonight, is to put this one out for community consultation and get some more feedback, because we want this document to be as strong as possible to guide our strategy with waste going forward. I guess it's always nice when the guiding principles are strong within something like this, and I'd just like to highlight the 3 guiding principles, which are number 1, and I really like that this is the number 1 strategy aspect of our waste strategy, and that's to avoid creating waste in the first place, because ultimately that's what we need to be doing. But if we are, inevitably we will create some, and so if we're doing that, number 2, it's to recover more resources and to value the waste as a resource and get more life from everything that we're using. And number 3 is, in that process, protect the environment and reduce the impact the waste has on the environment. It was mentioned before about food organics and the amount that goes into landfill, and that's not just taking up landfill, but is a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions with the way food waste breaks down in landfill and methane emissions. So if we can avoid that going to landfill, that helps with that, and we can also then get more useful life out of that food waste, because it's full of a whole lot of potential nutrients for our soil that can be put back in. So we need to start thinking more in terms of the lifespan of everything that we use and getting the most out of it, and be much more mindful about how we create waste in the first place. So I definitely encourage the community to provide their feedback on this waste strategy. I really hope it's successful and that we can live up to that vision and those principles. Like any strategy or plan, it's only as good as the actions that follow it. But I think the direction of this plan has got it right. So.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher, and I fully endorse everything that's been said, and I'll try not to repeat any of it and just speak very briefly. I think that we're waiting on another report as well, which is the report on the circular economy. And the circular economy is a step forward on recycling. And it fundamentally means that we should be only using materials that are easy to recycle. So that comes back to national, state, national and even international coordination. Also, the other two elements of the circular economy is, as Councillor Mansfield said, to reuse as much as we can and, of course, avoid creating waste. So I'm still waiting for the circular economy report to come out as well.
Councillor Mason. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just in the theme of Councillor Mason's comments about the circular economy, I think we're all looking forward to that report. That said, at our first environmental portfolio meeting, we've encouraged officers not to wait to bring initiatives to us to consider, particularly around some aspects of circular economy when it comes to areas such as asphalt and bitumen on roads, where we know that there are other products out there now that we could readily consider that are approved by Vic Roads, and we've asked officers to come back to us on that, where there are options to have bitumen with glass and plastics that are already part of the compound. We've also asked them to provide some guidance on footpaths in that similar regard, also the recycling of concrete and the areas around furniture, park furniture, playground furniture, the surfaces that we build our playgrounds on. Often we can use options such as rubber. I know we've already been doing some of that, but there's more that we can be done in that regard. Boardwalks. We have some examples of boardwalks where we've used recycled material towards Rippleside. St Helens is one example. I think we can expand further on that. And so these are things that I reckon there is some low-lying fruit. Whilst we need a strategy, we need to look at that big picture stuff. There are things that we can do today, and we've certainly encouraged our officers to bring those to our attention as quickly as possible so that this council can consider them.
Councillor Contell. Any other councillors like to comment? Councillor Nelson? No?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just closing, it's really heartwarming to hear the responses around the chamber. Waste is exciting again, so that's really good. 20 years ago, it probably wasn't as sexy as some made it out, but it sure is. There's a lot of exciting things happening in waste, and as Councillor Mansfield said, the number one thing is we need to avoid waste. That is our number one thing. We need to be really responsible about what we bring into our own homes. Yes, we have hard waste, but we really need to be responsible about what we bring into our own homes and try and recover more resources from our waste. But I'm excited to hear from what the community has to say over the next 8 weeks. So please have your say, and we need to get this strategy right. Pardon the pun, or our waste will simply pile up. Thanks.
Well said. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Carried. Thank you. Item 2, the draft Stormwater Services Strategy 2020 to 2030. Moved Councillor Aitken, seconded Councillor Mason. Thank you, Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. You might be actually asking why is it important stormwater services and why do we need a strategy, and it would be good for the environmental activists to be listening as well too, because Council actually is adopting tonight to put out for public exhibition a 10-year strategy associated with our stormwater systems. And why is it important with our stormwater systems? Well, in fact, climate change is actually causing more extreme weather and storm events to occur, and as a consequence we have the responsibility of stormwater associated with that. So we need to develop a strategy in Geelong about how we maintaining the and establishing for the rising demands associated with our drainage network and our stormwater systems. From a financial perspective, we have a valuation of about $600 million on our stormwater assets within the city. In terms of some of the other statistics, we have 1,900 kilometres of pipes. We have 64,000 stormwater pits. We have 300 retarding basins. We have 20 pump stations that council maintains and operates throughout the city. And we have 150 kilometres of open stormwater drains. And what's exciting about this particular strategy and why it does deserve to have response from people that are interested in the climate and also what action council is actually taking associated with the climate is that we're actually committing that we will try and actually get 20% of our water from alternative sources than where we do at the present time now. And stormwater is actually one of the most obvious of those. And that's a significant commitment of council to actually undertake that. This strategy also talks about that we're trying to establish a target of using stormwater irrigation for our tree coverage and green spaces throughout the city as well too. So once again, another significant initiative in terms of trying to harvest stormwater to actually make a significant impact in our community. And what we are actually going to be doing is that this strategy, after it is put out for public consultation and if it is adopted in council probably in February next year, we are committing to actually do some trials for the delivery of those particular strategies. It's been identified that Hovels Creek, Ocean Grove, Clifton Springs and Lara will actually be the first places in Geelong where we will be looking at trying to harvest stormwater for our tree coverage and our green spaces areas and also try and use alternative water sources apart from rainwater or purchasing it from tap water. So, look, I can commend this strategy to the council. I hope it does receive some public feedback and I hope it is acknowledged that council is actually trying to develop strategies and policies that are impacted on by climate change, and this is a very good example of the reality of the responsibilities that we have as councillors.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Aitken. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. Councillor Aitken has said just about all of it. However, in addition to climate change and expected increased rainfall intensity, we already have an increase in urban development and a much larger increases in non-absorbent runoff surfaces. So we just have greater floodways, and some of our old pipes, systems and so on, it's understood that they're ageing, our infrastructure's ageing, and it's not going to be able to take it as well. And so it is time that we did have this new strategy developed, and it's designed to bring all catchment, it's designed to have 25 catchment management units which incorporate approximately 300 stormwater catchments. Proposed actions are designed to bring all catchment management units to a basic level of service over the next 10 years and to create a plan to achieve this level of service in cases where a more significant investment of time and money is required. And this is no small task. Much of our flood data is outdated, and as I've already said, we have very many ageing assets. In addition, we have new methods, and as a young engineer, I remember we designed trapezoidal drains, and the purpose of a drain was, as I think I've heard the word drain a couple of times tonight, but the purpose of a drain was to transport water from point A to point B efficiently and quickly. But not necessarily these days. We want to enhance our waterways, our natural waterways, and enhance the environment as well. And it takes even more skillful engineering to design waterways that carry that type of flood. And so we are putting this out for community consultation. As Councillor Aitken said, there's 4 flagship projects in 4 different areas, and we are calling for community input. And we do have great opportunities now to create greener and healthier landscapes. And we can support integration of natural and built environments to create pleasant outdoor situations in parks, streets and gardens. We can also improve biodiversity corridors and improve our tourism and economic outcomes by improving the amenity. And so I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Grisbeck.
I just wanted to touch on something quickly. Whilst I endorse the strategy and the reason for planning, I do notice that the actions for the first 2 years are to complete flood studies and to continue to monitor. I would like to call on the community, if they're interested in this, to actually make their submissions known and take an interest in how your stormwater is flowing through to our environment. I think the 0 to 2 years seems like such a long time away to monitor and continue to monitor. So I would encourage that if you think that action needs to be done in the first 2 years, you need to make a submission. Especially those people that I hear from in my ward in the north, and Councillor Aitken and I have both heard many stormwater issues in the north, and I would encourage them to come forth and put their feedback forward, because that will then allow us to make any amendments that we need to going forward. So I think it's great work done by the officers in this regard, but I'd like to see the community's view on that. So I would encourage the community to input.
Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd echo Councillor Grisbeck's comments about really encouraging the community to give us some feedback on this. I remember when I was doing a whole lot of door knocking around, especially the older suburbs of Geelong, I think drainage would have had, and stormwater was one of the most frequently raised issues by residents. And I think this work really highlights some of the challenges we're facing more broadly as a municipality. We've got, on the one hand, a whole lot of new development and rapid increase in our population that we have to cater for and manage appropriately. And on the other hand, we have a whole lot of ageing infrastructure that we have to somehow maintain. And so there's so much demand on us to provide improved infrastructure. You add to that pressures from things like more extreme weather events with more extreme flooding and more frequent severe flood events, and things like our stormwater and drainage systems are really being tested. What is interesting as well is that this work has identified some of the complexities with an area where you have various bodies who are involved in managing this. So we've got Barwon Water managing some infrastructure and council in charge of other parts. So this report, this strategy helps to clarify the responsibilities and ensure that there's appropriate coordination between the two groups. I think you can see this happening in a whole lot of other areas in council where we have those increased pressures from a whole range of different sources, and we're in some ways having to play a bit of catch up and ensure that our strategies are really thinking about that long term and plan as best we can for that. But it's certainly going to be a challenge for us to manage all of the issues that this strategy has highlighted, I think. But there are some great opportunities as well, and I guess the key one is how can we more effectively use that stormwater, because water is going to become, it already is, but it's going to become a more and more precious resource going forward. So there are definitely some great opportunities here, but encourage the community to have their say on this one, because I know that drainage and stormwater issues are actually a really important one for many members of the community.
Thanks, Councillor Mansfield. Any other councillors care to comment? Okay, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Aitken needs to close, yeah?
Just because of that,
My
Mayor Asher, I'll
apologies.
teach you a lesson. I am going to give some closing remarks.
You can do the full 2 minutes.
What I will just actually say, just to put in perspective, this year is actually the 170th anniversary of the city of Geelong. It was formed in 1849, and this is the 170th year of local government municipalities in this particular region. It's taking us 170 years to have the asset base of stormwater catchment areas that we do now have with our pipes. And this report actually says it's only going to take another 10 years because of our rapid population growth to actually increase our assets in stormwater by 20% in the next 10 years. So that certainly puts in perspective how quickly Geelong is growing and why this issue actually is of significance, because it is going to require significant resources from the organisation to be able to respond to that.
Very good point, Councillor Aitken. Thank you. On that note, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Item 3, Amendment 363, Central Road, Drysdale, consideration of submissions. Moved.
Actually, Madam Mayor, I might move to defer this, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Seconded, Councillor Mason. Thank you. Those in favour for a deferral? Those against? Carried. Thank you. We'll defer that to the January meeting. Okay. Item 4, the Mallup Street Green Spine Traffic Flow Interim Report.
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment I'd like to move on this one.
Okay. Councillor Aitken's gesturing to the people in the
Just
gallery.
explain to the public what we've done.
Yes,
Mayor
we've
Asher.
actually decided we need to seek more information, particularly to Glenda, Mercedes and Patrick. We will consider the 363 at the next meeting because we considered we needed more information. So thank you. Thanks for your questions tonight. Sorry I couldn't give you a direct answer, but we can possibly catch up with you in the holiday period and discuss things further. Can't forecast that. No, I think we'll... Okay, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Aitken. Okay, back to item 4.
Thanks.
Councillor Cantell, you'd like to move an amendment.
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment. Madam Mayor?
No? Someone to second. Councillor Nelson, thank you.
Well, I'll speak to the amendment then, Madam Mayor.
Indeed.
Look, unfortunately, the report tonight doesn't answer the intent of my amendment or questions or directions to officers on the 25th of July. The response in tonight's item 4 does not go far enough to answer or to resolve how we can improve traffic flow and the time taken to move vehicles through Mallup Street between Moorabool and Yarra. The community certainly keep telling me very, very loudly that Mallup Street is still by and large not working, or at least not meeting community's expectations when it comes to traffic flow, pedestrian crossing waiting times, pedestrian safety, and also aspects of parking. Now, once again, unfortunately, tonight's report does nothing really to provide any solutions or options to consider to improve those aspects of the community's concerns. How significant infrastructure inclusions such as the turning lanes that we've asked to be considered in this report can be measured to a point where by installing them potentially you could have an improvement of 1 second has got me beat. I'm no engineer, but how we can measure so closely to the second has got me beat. In fact, someone's called the report tonight the 1 second million. So this amendment tonight, I specifically ask officers to look outside the box, I guess, to provide solutions and options to consider to address the community concerns and the questions that I just previously articulated. So this is not about the green spine. This is about traffic flow, it's about parking, and it's about answering questions that have been previously raised, but perhaps not articulated properly. So the amendment's quite specific in regards to what's being requested, and I'll just quickly read it out, which is the request of the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to Council by no later than March 2020, which includes an outline of various options, work scope, the potential impacts on the green spine design, pros and cons, costs and timelines, including but not limited to build capacity into Mallup Street between Moorabool and Yarra, which will efficiently service an increase of traffic flow of 11,000 plus car movements per day, achieve service levels for vehicle movements equal to or better than April 2016, which was pre the green spine, install left and right vehicle turning lanes at the intersections of Mallup and Yarra and Mallup Street and Moorabool, increase the on-street 2P car parking locations on Mallup Street between Moorabool and Yarra by up to 100% more than current, which is currently at around 9, improve pedestrian safety and vehicle delays at pedestrian crossings, and ensure the relevant costings are made and provided to councillors in order to consider the inclusion into the 2020-2021 council budget. So what I'm really doing here tonight is asking some specific questions on behalf of the community that I'm still wanting for in regards to answers. We're not actually voting on implementing anything other than getting further information. I'm going to actually leave it at that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Nelson has the seconder.
I reserve my right. Madam Mayor, I'd like to hear what other councillors have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment at this point? Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've heard Councillor Contell's request, and I understand it in the context that Councillor Contell wants answers to questions. And I'm perfectly happy that any question that a councillor asks should be answered. And I want to make it quite clear that some of the questions, I think, are perhaps retrogressive in terms of what is the philosophical, what's the aim of the green spine. I'm not sure that we're asking whether or not we want a green spine. I'm not sure that that is that, but I want to make it quite clear that I support the philosophy and the idea of the green spine and the reduction of traffic in that alignment. And so we have a lot of competing values at the moment. We haven't finished the green spine. We don't have a rational transport system in the city. We don't have a rational public transport system. We don't have a rational parking system. There's all these things that are not happening. And in the meantime, we're trying to condition the public not to use the green spine. So in some respects, or not to travel along Mallup Street, I mean in cars. And so I'm perfectly happy for these questions to be answered, but I just want to maintain that the direction is that we should be reducing the traffic in and along Mallup Street. That's my position.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other councillors? Councillor Harwood.
Madam Mayor, I'm a bit confused by what's being sought, and I'll work through that. Councillor Contell says it's not about the green spine, but it is about the green spine. It's Mallup Street green spine, the potential impacts on the green spine, so it's about the green spine. Part A, build capacity in Mallup Street between Moorabool and Yarra. Well, the space is finite there, so we know what space we've got to work with. So effectively what it's asking is to increase the traffic flow to 11,000 plus car movements per day, which would effectively just short of double what it currently is experiencing, which is exactly what it was designed to do. So that would be literally going back to what it was. Achieve service levels for vehicle movements equal to or better than, which is basically removing the green spine. Part C, well, this work's been done by independent traffic experts, and we actually have the data as in quite recent times as to what that would mean and the cost. Part D, we have a car parking strategy, which we've, while it hasn't been fully released, we certainly have some a new particular 2P car parking strategy with the half-hour free first half hour. Sorry. So I'm not too sure what we would achieve by increasing that between Moorabool and Yarra. Part E, improve pedestrian safety and vehicle delays at pedestrian crossings. That's just poor driving. That's just basically breaking a basic road rule. Do not block pedestrian crossovers. Do not block intersections. That's a very basic road rule. And Part F, ensure the relevant costings are provided to Well, we know it would be incredibly expensive because we know it was incredibly expensive to build in the first place. So to go into substantial change, which I think is what's being asked here, would be substantially expensive. And it's not acknowledging the number of people in our community who actually have really enjoyed the Green Spine and enjoy what it does and enjoy what it's bringing when you look to the future of how we'll be able to move from Johnson's Park down to the Gardens. And I'm certainly one who's frustrated by the time delays. I would like to see us really put pressure on the state government and internally for the next stage 2 and 3 and 4, whatever it takes to get down to the Botanical Garden, so we can actually see it in its fullness, what it was originally designed to do and to be for our community, which is a green spine running right through the heart of our city, where we do reduce the use of cars, we do open it up to more pedestrian activities and more leisure activities, and being able to enjoy a main street of a city. And you look around the world, and great cities have great green hearts, and I think we're on the right path towards that. I think this would be a really regressive step to tinker with what's already been started. I share the frustration of it not being completed and being slow in its delivery, but I think we have to persevere with it and not step back in time and not go back to what it was, which is fundamentally what this particular interim report is requesting at this point in time. So I can't support the amendment at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Howard. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. I acknowledge that this is a request for further information. This is not necessarily a decision on the Green Spine. I particularly like item E, which is around the improved pedestrian safety crossings. And to Councillor Harwood's point, I understand that is a basic breaking the road rules if you are parking across a pedestrian crossing. But those of us that use that particular crossing fairly often between Westfield and Market Square know that it has become quite dangerous. And I often get told from the community that the crossing there is it's not bright enough, it's not shown, it's not lit up enough, and the fact that the cars do get a bit frustrated by being in a parking queue down that Mallop Street for quite some time, then try to speed through that crossing so they're not held up at the lights. So I'm all for getting more information, and that's what this is. We should be able to build a system that is safe for all users. So I support the request for further information, and so I support Councillor Contell's amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually supportive of it. I didn't think I would be, but I am. And I'll just make a comment that it's not ideal to receive something like this at 6:45 before we come into to the meeting tonight, and we have to really. I mean, it's not an easy amendment. There's quite a bit involved in relation to it. But I think, to me, the bottom line is it's only a request for a report to come back. Nothing more than that. I want to make it quite clear that I'm very supportive of the Green Spine, and I don't wish to turn back the clock in relation to it. And of course, the purpose of the Green Spine and reducing traffic along that section of the green space. So even aspects of this amendment work against what the Green Spine is, in fact, the purpose of it is for. But having said that, as I said, we don't want to be seen chasing our tail, but if it's just a report and who knows what may come out of that, I'm supportive of the amendment.
Thanks to Councillor Murray. Councillor Mansfield, beg your pardon.
Madam Mayor, am I able to just ask a question? Because I guess I'm just interested in how much this report will cost to get. Maybe, I don't know if we've got any idea.
With asking a question at this point. Speculation.
I suppose I'll just raise the question then, because we do get external consultants and experts to perform these reports. We've already had one report at whatever cost that was. I support requests for information, but I guess we just need to, it's not simply a question. There is a, they're not just a series of questions we want answers to, but they do come at a cost. Look, this is a tricky one. I also support requests for information, but I do have to question the strategic intent, and it's a bit difficult when we're focusing on just one very small stretch of the city and looking at the number of cars we want to see moving through there, and increasing those, and how does that then interact with all of the other transport strategies we're trying to look at and develop, and our broader vision for the CBD and transport around the CBD. I guess I don't mind asking questions, but I suppose I'm still not entirely clear about what the strategic intent or purpose of these questions are, and what it's aiming to lead to. I don't think anyone would have issue with point E about improving pedestrian safety, but a lot of the other questions, I just don't. I don't see how they fit with some of our other strategies, and it's a fairly narrow scope of interest, really. It's one tiny patch in the CBD. So perhaps with some more time to discuss some of the issues around this as a councillor group, I might have come around to it, but I'm having some difficulty, as Councillor Murray has said, at this late point of receiving it to really get my head around what the implications of this are. So I'm not sure that I can support this amendment, although I do support in principle the idea of getting answers to two questions that we have as councillors.
Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Mountainee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the point's been made, and I find it very difficult to sort of vote on such a significant issue, with 15 minutes to consider it, when there's probably been 15 years going into the planning. So, that really troubles me, and notwithstanding the fact that I can understand the difficulty that the three ward councillors have trying to address the concerns of constituents, that's no doubt sort of, giving them some grief over certain aspects of, the first section of the Green Spine. So I understand that, and I just think we probably need to find another way to get answers to some of these questions. And I also wonder about the expense of such reports. When we've had such extensive reports already that have actually led to the Green Spine, to get other reports that tell us that the Green Spine is not what should be, or it needs to be changed for whatever reason, I think those reports are going to have to be very extensive and very convincing and well researched. So I suspect there's a fair amount of cost to get to the ultimate answer that maybe Councillor Contell is seeking for his constituents that are pressurising him. So I think it's a very, very difficult question. The couple of matters there that I really struggle with is that, in doubling the traffic and more parking, as a bit of a context in which we're doing here, I mean, they very much go against the principles of the city we're trying to build. I mean, we're trying to build a livable green city, a clean environment, we want to ease traffic congestion, all those sorts of things that, you know, are the city that we want for our children. The principles of what we're doing here seem to go against that. So I have some queries around reports that come back and say that we need to double the traffic and we need to do other things of that nature. It's not as if we're going to be able to create an environment there which will, you know, we can create an environment that will take 10, 15,000 cars, but we're only going to have 2,000 or 3,000 go through. We just don't have the space. It is really one or the other. On a positive note, and I'm not sure whether I read it in this report or read it in another report, but I understand that the Geelong CBD retail turnover is actually up 7%. I'm not sure whether it's in this report or another. 7% for the 2-year period, I think, was up to October, November, for a similar period 2 years ago. So, I mean, something is actually working, which is very positive. We probably need to ask ourselves why. Is it because there's actually more people living in the city? And why are they living in the city? Are they finding it more attractive? Are there more people working in the city? Yes, I think there are. Are there more people coming into the city that are providing that increased turnover for retail? Or are there different businesses there, or are the businesses there acting differently? And I sincerely hope it's the latter, that it's the businesses that we have that are actually operating differently and in a more customer-friendly way that's driving the increased turnover. Because I think, as I've said before, and I'll keep saying it, the solution to greater turnover in our businesses is not about cars, it's about the retail offering, and that's what we need to concentrate on. I went the other night, or last night it was, to the presentation on the trackless trams, and the research that was presented there by the gentleman who was speaking from, he said that he made the point that increased retail went up 1% because of increased traffic. Car traffic, 1%, and he put it down to a lot of other factors. So I sympathise that there are members of the community out there asking questions and deserve answers. I just think we need to find another way, and then actually going back on the green spine, the ground that we've made. And I hope we can find a way that's not going to be terribly expensive, because if we do, it's more money that's not going to be given out to community projects, which I'm sure there's a lot that we need to try and fit in this year. So if this matter was, have an opportunity to discuss this matter in greater detail, and more view can be put to me that changed my mind, well then I'm more than willing to listen to that, Councillor. But on the 15 minutes that we had, I'm finding it difficult to go back against the research and direction that we're currently on.
Councillor Mountainee. I'll make a comment. I tend to agree with Councillor Harwood that we need to see faster action across the whole project and the whole long-term vision from the gardens to Johnston Park. I think fixating on that little patch of the green spine is probably not doing anybody any favours. But I do support Councillor Cantell's need for more information as well. I think as one of the Brownville community representatives, Councillor Cantell's role is to provide that information flow to his constituents, and I'm satisfied that he has tried very hard to get answers and a clear response to people's concerns. And while I don't necessarily agree with some of the options that he's seeking information about, I think, as Councillor Murray, he said, I'm happy to see what the report brings and go from there. I don't think it needs to stop progress to the next stage. I think let's keep things moving, but I think it's only fair to support Councillor Cantell in his search for more answers. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was interesting to listen to what people had to say. I've had a bit of time to read it, probably a bit longer than others, I guess. The problem is with the green spine is it's only a small section of a bigger picture, and I would like to see that state government funding for the entire green spine to see what it looks like and see what it does to the city. I sat there the other day in traffic for quite some time, obviously, because I got stuck there, and looked at how pretty it was and drove down, because I usually drive down Ryrie Street, and that's an absolute nightmare. And yes, it's only one tiny patch, but the repercussions that's caused throughout the CBD, it's really made the CBD unlivable. And that might be a teething problem, but at the moment, because we're sort of, and I dare use the term, we're half pregnant with this thing, it's really creating problems. There's no signs for people to say, go another route, or go down across Fellmongers Road, or go down McKillop Street. It's just you drive in, you turn a corner, and you're in chaos constantly. Every day I get this, every day. Obviously because I work in the CBD. And they're not just blocking the intersections across from the Market Square to the Plaza, they're blocking all intersections across the city. And cars are sort of diving in behind parked cars to try and unblock intersections. And yes, it's illegal to block an intersection, but people don't expect to block intersections in Geelong. That's their mentality. Geelong's a town of 250,000 people. We don't expect things to be logjam like that. That's part of the reason that we live in Geelong, is because there's not a great deal of traffic, and all of a sudden we've created this monster that's really affecting traffic across the CBD. Certainly, east-west traffic. It's really becoming a problem. So what do? We seek some answers. We ask some questions and get some responses. One question I would like to ask is when is the state government going to fund the rest of it? And then we can see what we're dealing with. So yes, I agree with most of the things that Councillor Quintel said, but we need to be asking more questions, and some of those should be directed at the state government. There's no other designated routes to the average punter that comes into Geelong that has their holiday house in the Bellarine. They turn turn left at Mercer Street, and they come into the CBD and they're just stuck. And then there's half a dozen boats going to and from along Ryrie Street, and you didn't see these 3 years ago. These people weren't stuck in traffic like they are now. It's trying to turn out of Ryrie Street into Latrobe Terrace on an afternoon is just not possible. You can't do it. So you've got to go across Latrobe Terrace, cut through Geelong West, and then come back out onto Latrobe Terrace and then head towards Melbourne, because you just can't turn right. Yes, it's a tiny patch of Geelong, but this has affected so much more than just that tiny patch, which is why I support Councillor Quintel. And I just wanted to finish on something that Councillor Mountainee alluded to with regard to maybe people should be doing different businesses. I would never tell someone what they can and can't do. And I know one Mallup Street trader that's been there for a generation that's just packed up and moved somewhere else. And his business hasn't changed businesses, but his business is going through the roof. And he puts that all down to not being in Mallup Street. And I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Nelson, I'll put the amendment to the vote. So all those in favour of Councillor Quintel's amendment? Those against? Carried. The amendment's carried.
Question on that one, please.
Absolutely. All those in favour? We have Councillor Aitken, Councillor Murray, Councillor Quintel, Councillor Asher, Councillor Grisbeck, Councillor Mason, Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Nelson. Beg your pardon. Against, we have Councillor Mansfield, Councillor Harwood, Councillor Mountainee. Thank you. Okay, item 5, establishing an ageing well advisory committee. Do we need to go back? Amendment's been made, so we have to vote. Okay, the amendment becomes a substantive amendment, and we need to vote on the substantive amendment, which is the motion with the amendment in it. Correct? Okay, so all those in favour of the substantive amendment? We need to move in second. Move Councillor Quintel. Second, Councillor Murray. Thank you. Those in favour? Those against? Same. thank you. Do we want to go back and discuss? Would you like to?
I think
Do we need to?
I mean, we've discussed items on the amendment, but we haven't actually discussed the report itself.
We can. Okay. Councillor Contel.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not going to speak on this broadly. I just wanted to reiterate some of what Councillor Nelson said. I think he's very right in his advice that whilst this is only a small section of the CBD, it is having a significant impact on the remainder of the CBD. And again, as Councillor Nelson said, you know, the amenity of Geelong is why many live here, and it's not an expectation that our CBD should be gridlocked. Unfortunately, where I feel personally that a lot of that traffic has gone from Mallup Street, which was around 11,500 car movements a day, to 6,000, is either they've stopped coming to the CBD, including the occupants, or they're in Ryrie Street or the waterfront. Now, there'll be in other streets as well, but certainly we're seeing it in Ryrie Street, and we're certainly seeing it on the waterfront. And you know what community is continuing to say to me is that we can't just keep blocking and tackling vehicle users in the CBD, by introducing physical barriers and not allowing them to drive into areas, or at least restricting them and not encouraging them to go into areas without providing alternatives. And those alternatives just don't exist. There is no efficient alternative to bypass the CBD, including truck users, as we know. Equally, and I'm not against bike lanes, but we're about to introduce more infrastructure very soon into Jerringham Street, which is going to see Jerringham Street go from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and then further into Moorabool Street. But yet there's no alternatives for this traffic, and so this is just escalating. And so people will vote with their feet. They will either not come into the CBD, try to use alternative public transport if it's available, but we know that there's an issue with that as well. We've been told that people don't feel safe using it, they don't think it's clean enough, they don't think it's efficient enough. There's a whole range of things to be dealt with in that regard. And my fear is for the retailers, the shop owners, the business owners, and also the employees in this area. So it's about evolving in the right manner, I guess, and that's what we're seeking answers to tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Contel. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you. This report came to us as a result of a resolution on the 25th of June, and it was a report to come back to Council by November, so we almost made it. But it's to review the operations of the Mallup Street Green Spine, the award-winning Green Spine, I might add, particularly focusing on traffic flow and safety, and I think more importantly the impacts of introducing turning lanes was, I think, the focus of that resolution. The subsequent conclusion that there would be minimal improvements with either additional right-hand turn lanes or left turn lanes out of Mallup Street, out of the Green Spine. The report says introducing these turn lanes, left or right, on Mallup Street, at Yarra and Moorabool Street will not provide significant benefits to the community. However, if they were installed at a cost of $1.1 million, the turning lanes would save 1 second, which, like Councillor Contel, I find staggering as well how they actually worked that out. But just out of the report as well, I want to note the short-term actions that it recommends, and that's to continue to work with Regional Roads Victoria to improve traffic signal phasing, and I think that's one thing that must be prioritised. Develop an education campaign to reduce traffic blocking the intersections. Again, that's probably picking up on Councillor Nelson's point. And implement the identified directional signage improvements. Again, Councillor Nelson made those points. So all about education in relation to the use of Mallup Street. And I think it's important to add that it's an interim report, and there's a further report on this to come back to us in March 2020. And I think we've highlighted there's 6,000 cars per day use Mallup Street, as opposed to 2016 when there was 11,500 vehicles using it. So that is in fact the report itself. The amendment is quite different to that indeed, but that's been supported. So I'll leave it to that, Madam Mayor.
Murray, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to add a couple of things. Given the debate that we've just had, some of it's already reverted to we don't like the green spine. And that wasn't the purpose of the amendment at all. It was to get answers to questions. And it sort of surprises me really when I hear words like expectation gridlocked. The community expectations. Well, perhaps we've failed somewhere in that we haven't changed community expectations. We have a vision for the central Geelong. We have a vision for 10,000 extra people living in the centre of Geelong. We have a vision for a walkable, livable city. And we've already been told, I think Councillor Mountainee said tonight, 1% increase in trade by whatever exponential increase in traffic. I have the experience of living in Colac years ago, and the Colac people all voted to have the traffic all to go down the main street, down Murray Street, and it's still going down Murray Street, and nobody ever stops there. And it's the same thing here. We do have transport problems. How do you get to the Bellarine, Councillor Nelson? You can go down to Fine Street, you can go down to McKillop Street. You should not be deciding to go down Mercer Street and Mallup Street at this stage. You should know not to do it. And maybe we have failed in our messaging. And people need to get the idea. Stop hanging on to the 50s, back into the 1950s when Geelong, you drove your Holden FJ, whatever it is, down McCann Street. Doesn't exist anymore. And we have to move on.
Councillor Mason. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I support some of the points that were highlighted from this report that were quite interesting. I think in particular that reintroducing turning lanes wouldn't really make any substantial difference to people's travel times or the traffic flow, which I think indicates that while this sort of incomplete section of the green spine might be contributing to some of the traffic issues, I think there are much broader factors at play here. One only has to look around our municipality to see the amount of development that's going on. There's been a huge increase in the local population over recent years. We've got major work sites in central Geelong now that people are travelling to and from. You've got a lot of traffic movement. We've had growth in population in the Bellarine, and there are a lot of people who need to get across town or out to Melbourne. A lot of people from Melbourne moving to Geelong and commuting to and from work. And what this highlights is that our city is not being designed to cope with those increased traffic volumes that we're now facing because of that developmental pressure. And unfortunately, we're not starting with a clean slate. We are trying to figure out how to build the best city we can and the most livable city we can with all of those growth challenges that we're facing. And focusing on one small stretch of the green spine and blaming a lot of our traffic problems in the CBD on that section, I think ignores the much bigger picture we have here that we need to be focusing on, and it's how we want this city to look in the long run, how we want to be moving around this city in the long run. I think our other piece of work, the Transport Network Operating Plan, is looking to answer some of those questions about going, well, we've got lots of different modes of transport. we need to start thinking strategically and about the really long term, about how we're going to move people around the city and what's the best mode of transport for each section of that CBD to get the best outcome for everyone who needs to use and travel through the CBD. So I think this report was really interesting. There's a lot to take from it, and I was particularly fascinated that adding turning lanes really isn't going to make any difference to the travel times. Granted that it does leave in place a lot of the infrastructure that's there, but I think it does speak to that broader problem about transport movement around the city and the need to address it in a much more strategic and holistic way than simply focusing on one small segment.
Thanks, Councillor Mansfield. Any other comments? Councillor Nelson.
Still writing my notes, but I'll speak anyway, just off the cuff then. Yeah, I certainly agree with what Councillor Mason said, that yes, McCann Street doesn't exist anymore and we need to move with the times. I agree with that totally. But this is part funded by this, well, the majority of it's been funded by the state government, and they are on this journey with us, and they need to, as I saw what's happening in Melbourne at the moment, it says there's a plan A and a plan B. We don't have a plan B, and that's not being, that might be our fault, that we're not educating the population, but certainly the state government's not helping us educate our population and the population coming from Melbourne trying to get to the Bellarine every weekend. We just don't have a plan B. People turn left off Latrobe Terrace, no matter where it is, and they get stuck in traffic. And we need to educate them, and we need the state government to help us do that. And we need to have a proper plan B, because we don't have one, and that's what the problem is. So I agree with what you're saying, but we need to get that message out there that we're not telling the people in Geelong and the ones that come down on the weekends where they can go because Mallop Street's shut, or where you can go because there's 10,000 people living in Geelong and most of them drive cars because the public transport system is so broken in Geelong and surrounds that you can't catch a bus to the Bellarine because you don't know if you'll get there. And you might get there in 2 hours, and you certainly won't be able to get back again because the bus stops at 6 o'clock. So there's all these other competing priorities that we're trying to fix one little bit, and the state government says you can't put buses in your public transport strategy when the whole problem starts with public transport. And I think we need to have a better public transport system in Geelong, because if we do, then more people will use it, and then we'll have less reliance on cars. I live, like most people here, within 10 kilometres of the CBD, and I drive my car like most people in this room because the public transport system is so bad. And until we fix that and get our plan B, we'll be debating this until I turn grey all over. So I certainly support this recommendation to get the answers, but get some more answers and help the state government bring us along with this journey. Thanks.
Councillor Nelson. Any other comments? Councillor Patel, to close. That's it.
Nothing further from me.
Great, thank you. So once again, we'll vote on the substantive motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, item 5, establishing an Ageing Well Advisory Committee. Moved Councillor Mountainee, seconded Councillor Mansfield. Thank you, Councillor Mountainee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report recommends that Council approve the establishment of an Ageing Well Advisory Committee next year, and to appoint a councillor as chair, and I've agreed to do that. If approved, the committee's role would help shape how the city supports the older people in the region to feel more valued and empowered. And I've almost put myself in that category now. So.
Almost.
We do.
Not yet. We don't.
I'm old in looks, but progressive in thought. Right.
Yes.
It is planned the committee is going to utilise the experience of older people, and I think that's terrific. and bring some new perspectives and advising council in areas and social inclusion, participation, existing age services, just to mention a couple. And as you know, we provide some services already in this area, about 10% of the population, I believe. The good thing about it is we're going to have a committee and with a maximum of 12 members, and we're going to ask 4 community people to come on to that committee, which is terrific. Australia, as you know, is an ageing population, and as we've just been discussing, Geelong region is increasingly becoming a very popular place for retirement. And so it's good that we sort of ongoingly, review our policies, whether they be around the built environment or whether they be around our services, because things do change and requirements change, and there's always better and different ways to do things. But I sincerely hope that one of the outcomes of this review will be to encourage and to insist older people to grow old wisely, addressing a lot of issues, and physical activity, which I'm involved in, is obviously a very, very important one. Inclusion in community and sort of access to transport so that people don't become isolated in their homes. I was talking to someone recently about driving cars, and they made the point to me, which I thought was very good. They said that they hadn't renewed their licence because they felt they were too old to drive. But they also made the point to me that they hadn't driven for over 10 years in busy traffic. They still had a licence and they still drove, I don't know, from Warm Ponds out to wherever. But they wouldn't drive in the city, not particularly Geelong, they said Melbourne. So people, transport's a terribly important thing for older people. So hopefully that's one of the issues that we can address in Geelong as we tackle the importance of transport. So tonight, if approved tonight, the nominations of the Ageing Well Advisory Committee will open in 2020. And will be promoted in local media and online. So hopefully we get some really terrific participants on that committee, and I very much look forward to working with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mountainee. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I support all the comments made by Councillor Mountainee, and also am thrilled that he will be the chair of the, hopefully at the end of this resolution will be the chair of the new Ageing Well Advisory Committee. As the chair of 2 of Council's other advisory committees, I can only say that they are such rich sources of community feedback and advocacy on some really important issues, and I think it would be wonderful to add the voice of older people in our community specifically to those to that body of advice that we receive as a council. We have a number of Councillor Mountainee outlined a range of some of the issues that are of importance, particular importance to older people, but council does provide services directly to some of our older residents. That is an issue that we're currently having to really consider how we best do that, or deliver some of those services as a council, and how we ensure that those services are fit for purpose and fit for people's needs, and that voice will be so important in guiding the direction of what council does with those services. In addition, I think we've got the Royal Commission findings into aged care services, and although only a small part of that report focused on home care, which is the space where council operates, there were some very significant findings there. So I think there will be some very interesting work and topics come before the Ageing Well Advisory Committee if council supports its establishment, and I certainly think it'll be a valuable voice for council moving forward on a whole range of other important issues.
Mansfield. Councillor Quintel.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, first of all, I applaud Councillor Mountainee for sort of wanting to champion this. It's such an important area of our life, Some of us, probably the vast majority of us here, are at the stage where we've got ageing parents. I've certainly been working through that for the last 5-6 years, and you know, it's incredible how life sort of has that full circle. And you know, once when you're such a strong person in the family, and life, you know, age takes over, and unfortunately provides all sorts of challenges. And it's hard on families as well when they're trying to look after. Parents puts all sorts of stresses on them. One, they never feel like they're doing enough. Two, you know, you've got your own commitments that you're trying to conform to and complete. And I suppose the other one, Councillor Mountainee, and I'm sure that you'll be all over this, is you know, probably working closely with the multicultural committees as well, because what I saw with my parents, and I've seen with many migrant parents, is that this is the first time that those people and then their families have seen anyone get old. You know, they generally fled war-torn countries, came here and never saw their parents again, or if they did, only saw them once or twice. And so the whole family's never actually been through that experience of the parents getting old. So if we can educate and help those migrant families prepare for that age, and help their families prepare for that age, and provide services that might do that, I think it will be you know, an incredible assistance to them. Yeah, really applaud what you're doing here, Councillor Mountainee, and will be very supportive of anything you're trying to achieve in this space.
Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. I was recently at a meeting of some volunteers that deliver Meals on Wheels in Drysdale and Ocean Grove, and it was amazing the significance of their advice on how our services are delivered, and what people are saying and requesting in our elderly community. And it's right, we do need to hear from all parts of our community, especially when we're going through the federal government changes to aged care, the royal commissions into aged care, and I just feel that we need to hear from that community about things like living longer, being heard, and also them to feel part of our community just as much as anyone else in our community. So I would encourage people in 2020, if this was to get across the line tonight, that they would put their hand up to be on that committee and really share their views with us. So thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Only for a momentary reflection, as the oldest councillor, I'm by far, by 5 years.
The most senior.
You see, I need advice on that too.
It's framing.
So I did hear you, Councillor Grisbeck, about being heard. I do hope as I age gracefully I will continue to be heard. And I do congratulate Councillor Mountainee for taking it on. And I hope I'm not too old by the time my turn comes in a year or two. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly others have talked about hack services. I wanted to discuss things that are personal to me. This is such a good job we have in council. We discuss such a wide variety of things. You know, some of us were disagreeing before about things, and here we are. 5 minutes later, we've come together and we're talking about something that is certainly near and dear to most of our hearts. My other job, my other hat, is in disability, and we were trying to. I was at a group the other day at Genu, out in my patch, out in Highton, and we were talking about how do we get young people with disability out of aged care facilities. There's far too many of them in aged care facilities, and one of the things that I was taught growing up was to certainly respect our elders, and certainly in this country we're starting to understand that communities are judged by how we take care of our elderly, and we've done such a poor job in the past, and that's pretty evident with the Royal Commission into aged care, and certainly with Councillor Mountainee in the role. I will respect my elders and say that it's certainly the committee is safe in his hands, and I wish him well in his new role during that advisory committee. Because I'm sure he'll do a good job, because it certainly means a lot to Pat, and it means a lot to us, and it means a lot to you.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Murray, did you have something you wanted to say? Were you just gesturing wildly earlier?
Say.
Would you like to?
No.
Sorry, I thought you were indicating.
I just make this point. You have to be 55 to be on that committee. So I am not sure if Pat actually passes that test.
Who's passed?
Okay.
Just a matter of months, I believe.
That's the discrimination I like.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments before we go back to Councillor Mountainee?
Further, other than to say I'm overwhelmed by the support by my fellow councillors.
Haven't voted yet.
I hope
You're assuming that I haven't spoken or voted yet, Councillor Mountainee.
Right.
Oh, okay. But I hope I can live up to your expectations.
Better kill the anticipation and put it to the vote.
I surely will try to, and I also thank you for the perspective about multicultural. I'll make sure we keep that in mind as we go through all of the different issues and all the other special interest groups. So, thank you.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Look, it's unanimous. Well done. Those against, none. Carried. Now we do need to call for nominations. So the formal part now is calling for nominations to chair the committee. And Councillor Nelson's...
I nominate
Councillor
Pat Mountainee.
Okay, Councillor Mountainee, you've been nominated, seconded by Councillor
As one of the youngest councillors, Councillor Mountainee, I'd like to nominate you.
Okay, all those in favour of Councillor Mountainee as chair? Terrific. Those against? None. You're in. Thank you, Councillor Mountainee. Well done. Okay, item 6, road renaming due to the Drysdale bypass. Moved Councillor Aitken. Seconded Councillor Mason. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Look, I was fascinated to find out this week at my first portfolio meeting that this issue fell under finance. And so I'm continually learning that you're always amazed of your responsibilities in local government, and this is a good example of one of those. I'll actually leave it to our ward councillors if they want to make some comments, but all I wish to say is that it appears we're changing a significant number of names to reflect Anzac heroes, and it's fantastic that one of those Anzac heroes is actually a female hero.
Thank you, Councillor Aitken. Point nicely made. Councillor Mason, you seconded.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Aitken said it all again, almost. He stole my thunder. I wanted to tell everybody there was a female Anzac, but anyway, the Drysdale bypass is about 6 kilometres, and because of that, it's cut off about 9 roads, and they've been truncated, and they need to be renamed. We did do a significant community consultation, and we discovered that there was enough angst over 5 of those roads that we have to go out for further consultation. But in the essence, we've got 4 roads which, following the consultation, it wasn't unanimous, the names, but there's various rules that have to be conformed with, such as emergency, access, names have to be easy to understand, and they have to follow certain rules. And so any objections that we did have on the other 4 roads either didn't conform with the rules or they made no alternative suggestion. So I'm perfectly happy that the 4 names have significant community support, and I would recommend that they be accepted. And they are High Street, there's 4 roads. One is High Street, which is will allow the bypass of the Port Arlington Road. It's between Port Arlington Road and Railway Street, Railway Place. Numbering won't change, so that's fine. There is a High Street already, and it's sort of like a continuation of High Street. The other names are McKiernan, after Lawrence Nicholas, Lawrence Nicholas McKiernan, who was born in Drysdale, and he was an Anzac. Similarly, William Mercer Hackwell was a Drysdale person, also an Anzac, and as Councillor Aitken mentioned, Winifred May Benham was also an Anzac. So I recommend that those names be accepted. Though we did have some discussions about other names that could be thought of, such as other significant people in the community, perhaps even multicultural names that they have to be easy to announce during an emergency or whatever, and also some Aboriginal names may be quite acceptable. So we need to broaden our database. We should not be only thinking of Anzacs. There are plenty of people to be respected within our community, but on this occasion I recommend that these names be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Mason. He summed it up all quite nicely as well. Now, the Drysdale Bypass is a fantastic project and one that has been advocated for within the Bellarine for decades. But sadly, one of the on-flow effects of this is that many roads are truncated, which means they are either shortened or their entrances or exits are slightly changed. Under state legislation, this means that we have to now rename them. We are operating entirely at their discretion in this regard, nearly. There's many complications in terms of renaming of roads. We cannot change suffixes. We can't just say east, west, or keep one and change the other. So we really have to change these names, and in Drysdale, we prefer to go for the Anzac, local Anzac registrar, as we have here, as Councillor Mason has said. Some of the objections to this, or most of them rather, have not been against the names, but rather the fact that we have had to change them. It's no easy feat to change your road name and the effects it has on yourself if you have businesses in the area. It's a very difficult process that people don't like to go through, and we wish we didn't have to do it. But on this item, I believe we have reached an admirable outcome with some good names, with some good solid history, and hopefully they'll last long into the future.
Also, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm supportive of this recommendation, but I'm a little uncomfortable with when no response is got a favourable to the recommendation. And I'll just highlight that Hackwell Place from Jetty Road, a total of, I imagine, seven whether they're sent out or how they are done. 3 come back not in favour, and only 2 in favour, but we count the 5 that didn't come back as favourable. And we do that because there's an asterisk there that says non-return of surveys indicate in favour of the preferred option. Now, that obviously has come about through history of doing this, I guess. I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but that's the system we have. So they're not 100% in favour. You know, all these, the name changes, and we just assume because someone doesn't reply that we take that as in favour. Perhaps that's done statewide by every council, but I just highlight that fact that I'm a little uncomfortable with that. As I say, we got caught up in a name change a few months ago, and I think it blew up. And I've got to say, when I first saw that word truncated a little while ago, I had to reach for a dictionary, but now I know, and that's great. So I just made those points, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray, and there will be more of these, and there's a few really contentious ones. So
tough ones are yet to come.
It is, yeah, it is a difficult one because it is state policy that we follow, and it's quite complex. So, okay, any other comments? Okay, I go back to Councillor Aitken to close.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Look, my only comment is there's 15 items on the agenda plus 2 notices of motions. We're up to item number 6, so we're only 35% of our way through the meeting tonight, and we're already at 20 past 9.
Okay, so right. Time limits from now on. Thanks, Councillor Aitken. On that note, all those in favour of that recommendation? Those against? Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Okay, motion carried. Okay, item 7, moving right along nice and quickly. Community Life Council Advisory Committee's report, moved by Councillor Mansfield, seconded Councillor Mountainee. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, conscious of the time, but I'm really proud to be putting forward this motion just regarding the work of the advisory committees to council over the year, and if any of the chairs of the different advisory committees would like to make comment on their particular advisory committee, I'll leave them to do that. I currently chair the Women and Community Life Advisory Committee and the Karinga Aboriginal Advisory Committee, and it has been such a pleasure to be involved in both of them. There are some really fantastic community members, representatives on those committees, and the work that they do in a volunteer capacity is just, it is brilliant, and they provide such an important voice and perspective to council. Highlights from the Karinga Aboriginal Advisory Committee this year is really the establishment of a working group to start the development of our first reconciliation action plan. We had a whole range of different voices involved in the first stages of developing that plan. It certainly hasn't been easy, but I think it's been a great education process for council. And for many of our officers who are involved in supporting that, I think all of us have learnt a lot from that. I'm really looking forward to getting feedback from Reconciliation Australia, hopefully next year on our first run at that Reconciliation Action Plan. There are some really substantial changes that plan will recommend for council, and I think some fabulous opportunities for us going forward. We do some great work, in terms of recognising our Indigenous heritage and culture, and the broader Aboriginal community who contribute to our community today. But we certainly have a long way to go with that as a council, and I know we've discussed this on many occasions before. And the Reconciliation Action Plan, particularly if we're willing to put meaningful actions and resources behind it, we'll start to address some of those areas where we really need to put in some extra work. The Women in Community Life Advisory Committee is one of the most energetic committees I think I've been on, and inspired committees. They are. This year we had a whole group of new faces join the committee, and the passion and interest that they've brought to that group has been fantastic. There are events on all the time that this group drives. There was one, I think just last week, where they arranged for a representative from the state government to come down and talk about Recognition Matters, which is a program that looks at ensuring we nominate more women for some of those significant honours, Australia Day and Queen's Birthday honours, because women are significantly underrepresented. That's just one example of some of the work that committee does. They are really supportive of the work of WILD, which is looking at trying to improve gender equity and in terms of our representation on council at the elections next year. They've done a whole lot of work on our own internal gender equity framework, as well as providing feedback to state government gender equity strategies. So they are another brilliant group. I suspect next year we'll have some sort of event for International Women's Day. It was a fabulous event this year, and wonderful to see so many brilliant women in the community recognised for the work that they do at that event. So I'm looking forward to those awards again next year.
Right. Thanks, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Mountainee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm seconding this as the new Deputy Chair to Councillor Mansfield. So I've not had the pleasure of dealing with a lot of these groups to date, but I'm certainly looking forward to that. And I was trying to do a little bit of catch up, and I was looking at a book, and a map in that book drew my attention last night of the map of Australia with the areas of the nations of the first people. If you've ever seen that map, it is fascinating. Yeah, so I just thought I'd share that with you. So looking forward to it, and I would like to echo your sentiments about thanking all the volunteers who have worked on the committees, and I'm sure the valuable contribution they made, and just further evidence of the great contribution of volunteers in our nation. It really is the engine room of Australia. And also to thank the other chairs, I think Councillor Aitken and Councillor Tontel, from memory, who chair those other two groups. So thank you to you two councillors for your leadership in that regard.
Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you. Just quickly want to touch on the Multicultural Action Plan Advisory Committee. I have passed the mantle on to Councillor Contel for this last 12 months, but the last 2 years have been working closely with this group. Some of the amazing activities and achievements that we've done as a committee was in relation to the Christchurch terror attacks. I think it was a real insight into how this committee works with all our multicultural community members, that the Christchurch Interfaith Network, Christchurch Interfaith Memorial Service was an actual, we all came together as all facets of the community, with Sheikh Mohammed Ramzan, who's the Imam of Geelong, with we had our own officers internally, both Vima and Danielle in terms of youth. We had, Randall and Vanessa and those from the Interfaith Network actually wanting to do something as the multicultural group to pay our respects to the victims in the Christchurch attack. And that was just a really quick pull together of a meeting, and actually designed that we had hundreds and hundreds of people come out and want to pay their respects for something like that. And I think that was a true indication of how this group is working to mend those groups together and make sure that we have participation across all of our council, both in terms of council services and in relation to the role that we play within the multicultural community. And that's just one particular achievement that we created the last 2 years. What I'd like to see going forward, we've actually got a lot of initiatives on around cultural diversity and refugee weeks. We're really wanting to lead some of the identified priority actions out of the Multicultural Action Plan. And we want to also talk about how we wanted to visit some of the cultural significant sites. And we usually share this meeting around, not just in City Hall, but we shared it around all different both workplaces and cultural places. So we went out to the Geelong Mosque, we had out at Diversitat, we've had many out at Deakin, and those types of areas, to make sure that we actually understand as a community group and as an advisory committee, we understand what each community group is trying to achieve, and we work together with things like Diwali, the Diversity Week, Harmony Day, and one of the real successes that we saw this year was around the women's only swimming program. It was attended by, close on 100 people. But actually this year we've implemented a men's only swimming program, and that has gone absolutely amazingly. And it is actually, not only helping people with their cultural heritage, but actually if you're, a little fearful of being in the pool with the other gender, then this is for you. So great work by the officers, and as Councillor Mansfield said, I think these groups in particular have done an amazing job the past 2 years, and I'm looking forward to handing over the mantle to Councillor Contel for the last 12 months. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Grisbeck. Any other councillors? Councillor Contel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillor Grisbeck. You're not looking forward to handing it over more than I am looking forward to taking it on. In fact, it's great to be back involved with some of those multicultural initiatives in this CBD and our town in general. One of the great things about the Multicultural Action Plan is some of the partnering that occurs, which Councillor Mansfield referred to, is all those people that are working in different organisations, but also volunteering their time to bring their expertise to the table. And I was really honoured on Friday night to be invited to the 25-year anniversary of MAX, which is the Multicultural Aged Care Services. And we know that, the partnering that we do with organisations such as Diversitat, MAX and others brings so much value to our region, because we can't do it on our own. If we were to try to do everything that Diversitat does, it would be impossible. So those partnering relationships, whether it's Barwon Health or whether it's Victorian Police or the different groups that are involved in establishing what are the needs for those communities is really valuable. And I once again publicly congratulate Max on the great work that they have been doing over the past 25 years. Joy Lego has been outstanding, and it was great to see some of the founding members of the board there on Friday night, obviously Frank Costa being one of them, but unfortunately the loss of Jordan Mavros, who was such a strong community member in that multicultural sphere, and obviously one of the originals there at Max, and also my own brother, Councillor Stretch Contel, previously. I don't know why I refer to him as councillor, I just call him that now. He was one of the founding board members as well, so kudos to all of those guys that had foresight to do what they did.
Councillor Contel, any other comments? Councillor Mansfield to close.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to my fellow councillors for their comments and also for their work over the past year with their advisory committees. I'd just like to close by thanking the Community Life team and officers for the fantastic work they do in supporting these advisory committees. Between them all, there is actually a huge amount of work that's involved in coordinating these meetings, but not just the meetings, all the events and activities. I think that these groups are associated with a lot of the public-facing activities we do as a council, and so a tremendous amount of work goes in by the officers, and I'm sure many additional hours and lots of stress is involved at various times. So I'd just like to thank them for their work in supporting the work of these really important groups for council.
Thanks, Councillor Mansfield. Okay, put the recommendation of the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Okay, item 8, council meeting dates. I'll move this one, seconded by Deputy Mayor Grisbeck. This is a fairly routine one. Set of dates for next year for the ordinary council meetings every month, and every second week the community focus council meetings. And one of the biggest challenges is to determine where we hold the community council meetings and which wards get which dates. So we did the draw it out of a hat routine and landed on the actual listing that we have here. We're really keen to continue the community focus council meetings. We have had history in this council, not ours particularly, but pre-administrators of only having one council meeting a month, and this council determined it was much better to have 2 per month, one out in the community to give people greater access to the council and the endless fascination we offer with our council meetings and all the thrills and spills. So yes, I am very pleased to move this one.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. I think the community, along with our normal ordinary meetings here in the chamber, the community focused meetings do provide an opportunity to get closer to our community and for our community to have convenient locations by which we have held these community meetings. I think what it has done, what I have seen over the last few years, is it improves the transparency with our community. It also improves the transparency in decision making in our community. So I'm really pleased that we are back on for community focus meetings for the final year of our 3-year term, and it was drawn out of a hat because we would love to have Windermere about 5 times, but I guess we have to share ourselves around. So the community that, even one of the examples was a community meeting out at the Corio Cloverdale community centre, and we had a barbecue. Community actually came out to see us. They came to ask us questions. They really interacted with the council, and that is, in my opinion, the reason why we are sitting around this table. So whilst this is just noting the meeting dates, it's really important that we continue the community focus meetings, because that's where we get close-hand information from our community. Thank you.
Any other Councillor Murray?
I totally agree with Councillor Grisbeck on that matter, and I think as a group we perhaps should come up with some new initiatives as to how we publicise those community focus meetings. Whatever was done the past 12 months has been good, but I think it's an area we can do better. Whether that's, well, I mean, social media, through the newspapers. I shouldn't have started, because I guess as a group we can come up with better ideas ourselves, and to really champion, Pat, I'll keep using that word, champion those community focus meetings in our particular wards, and to promote the upcoming meetings. You know, they've been successful, certainly been successful in the Brownwell ward, and we want to see them continue, but perhaps do it better.
Mason.
Just one little thing to add. I was really encouraged by the barbecues that we've had, or the various things where the community have participated in that gathering. And in a sense, that's, although I do like my gourmet food, etc., I don't mind. I think it's really great that we can mix in with the community when it's possible, and have a few, a few sausos, etc. Yeah.
Beautiful salads as well.
Thanks.
Any other comments? No? Okay. In the interest of keeping things moving, Ron.
I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Peet said with regards to advertising it. I was at a meeting in Armstrong Creek a couple of weeks ago, and they said they didn't know the meeting was there until a couple of days prior. So one of the things that we do well as a council is getting things done. I really think that, but one of the things that we do poorly is getting our message out. So whether that's through the socials or through the Addy or through the Indie, we need to do more of that. And I look forward to the community meetings in Cardinia just after Easter Monday in April, and then just before the caretaker period before the election. Hopefully they'll be nice and central in Belmont or Armstrong Creek, somewhere like that, and they'll be good.
Okay. Councillor Nelson. Okay. In closing, I won't add anything, so let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? No. Carried. Okay. Are we 50% of the way through yet, Councillor Aitken? Okay. Item 9, planning authorisations. Council to staff. Moved Councillor Sullivan. Seconded Councillor Mason. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pretty standard to appoint a city officer as an authorised officer under the Planning and Environment Act 1987.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thanks very much, and the person's name is Sarah Drago, and we welcome her to the fold.
Thank you. Anyone have anything to add? No? Councillor Sullivan?
Nothing to add.
Right, I'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? No. Carried. Pat didn't raise his hand, but we know that he did vote. Okay, item 10, tender 2, lots of zeros 8, free Wi-Fi and enhanced broadband services. Moved Councillor Aitken, seconded Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. This is actually a really good news story. This council actually does provide free Wi-Fi in certain parts of Geelong already, and in October in 2018, we actually was announced by the state government that Geelong would be successful in receiving $1.8 million over 4 years under the Connecting Regional Communities Partnership Project. And when the state government announced that project, they actually announced it out in Norlane at the Norlane Community Centre. And I'm pleased to say that over the last 12 months, I've had the pleasure of working with Brett Luxford and Matt from our ICT manager to actually see how this project could give some real delivery in terms of addressing the digital divide. And I'm really pleased tonight that this tender document actually establishes 26 free Wi-Fi sites within the northern suburbs of Geelong. And what it is going to do when it is installed at those sites is that a person will have the capacity to register for the free Wi-Fi, and they will have access to, of up to 1 gigabyte of free Wi-Fi access for the next 4 years if they keep their registration. This is a significant example of this council's commitment to social equity and providing fairness and justice in making sure that everybody in Geelong can actually participate in living in the community that we do exist. All of us know that you cannot apply for a job now unless you have access to a digital platform. All of us understand that nearly all government services that we are provided at the federal, state and local government level, you actually have to have digital access to be able to do it. Now, what I'm certainly attempting to do now is to partner with the local community to try and find devices so that people can use the free Wi-Fi. And each of the site locations are quite unique that have been identified with the Wi-Fi, where we will be able to partner with those community organisations and community groups to address a significant issue that exists in our community, and that is the digital divide. So I want to once again personally congratulate the state government for making this funding available, and certainly for the officers for their tremendous support and investigation in site locations. And I'm really proud of this particular initiative, and I'm looking forward to switching on the first Wi-Fi in the northern suburbs. I should say that the other site locations are part of our existing network and also enhancement. We're actually going to put one down at Cardinia Park, but I don't think it's going to help us with the 30,000 people that exist down there. But it does mean that when there's smaller events and activities in the Cardinia Park precinct, if they are near the Wi-Fi, they will be able to use it. But this is a really good news story, and I'm looking forward to the community, certainly in the northern suburbs, embracing it and taking full advantage of this significant infrastructure.
Councillor Grisbeck.
Just briefly, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is one of the best survey responses that we've had, I think, in relation to the when we put it out for consultation. We had 600 community members throughout October we got responses from, and I think that shows that this initiative is really important in the community. I think they'll have internet speeds that are faster than currently available and download up to 1 gig free per day. So I think local businesses will also enjoy the economic benefit and will look to engage, as Councillor Aiken had said, and making sure that these are all in strategically good spots. I do see a lot of the young kids sitting outside the library when the library is closed so that they can use the Wi-Fi. So now we won't need the fact that they all congregate outside the library to use the Wi-Fi. They should have somewhere closer to their home or to their school that will have free Wi-Fi access points. So in saying that, I think this is an amazing opportunity, and also thank the officers for putting this into the public domain, and this is part of how we are now being a lot more transparent in relation to the ones that we can for out to tender. So thank you to the officers for that.
Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Asher. Just to note, though, listening to Councillor Grisbeck, that their children are hanging about the library to do their downloading, it might mean that they don't have it at their school. And I've become aware that most of our state schools don't have domestic quality speed, and certainly not 1 gig speed. And I'm sure Mr Luxford knows all about that and stresses him to some extent. But I'm mindful of the fact that I do hope that some schools get attention, but I'm sure all of the schools don't get that attention. That's something else for us to be mindful of.
Good point. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I certainly want to congratulate the state government for this funding. As someone who visited Brisbane decades ago when Wi-Fi was introduced into the mall there, and all the students that were in the mall, it really does diminish antisocial behaviour when you've got lots of Wi-Fi and the kids come, as previous councillor said, Councillor Jim I think it was, said that that they hang around libraries when they're closed, and when they're open they're inside, and that's true, as we both know. But having Wi-Fi doesn't just extend to having them in schools as well. Some people, as we know in the north or anywhere for the City of Greater Geelong, don't have Wi-Fi at home, or even if they do, perhaps sometimes that Wi-Fi at home isn't a safe place to study, so they come to libraries to study, and if they're not open, they've got nowhere else to go. So having these places throughout the CBD, if we could have them in the CBD, in our mall, that might encourage a few more kids to come in and do the right thing and not the wrong thing. So I really support this initiative.
Councillor Nelson. Anyone else? Back to Councillor Aitken to close.
Thank you very much, Mayor Asher. Look, as I said, I'm pretty excited about this. This is a great initiative, and I'm really pleased that an organisation like TAC and WorkSafe are actually working with us as well too, in that they donated about 180 laptops. That majority of those were actually circulated out into the northern parts of Geelong as well too. And if you connect those laptops with this Wi-Fi opportunity, and when you actually look at the Wi-Fi site locations that nearly every community neighbourhood centre is actually going to be able to get the free Wi-Fi, this is really a significant initiative to try to assist the social and economic disadvantage that does exist in that part of our community. So I'm really proud of this one. Yeah.
Thank you. Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Okay, item 11, revocation of flood-prone area designation of new lots at Armstrong Estate, stages 40, 40A, 40B, 42, 43 and 48. Moved Councillor Harwood. Seconded.
No, I'm happy to move item 11 and 12 on block, if that helps.
Are we permitted to do that? I don't think we're permitted to do on block.
That request.
I thought I'd read that, yes. Okay, so seconded Councillor Mountainee. Yes, we'll make it really quick. Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Oh, thank you. We've done a number of these. They're very simply designed to allow builders to build, or to owners to build on their land without special permits from the city, without raising the floor levels of their premises, and also reduce costs in property insurance. They're very straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mountainee.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Item 12, revocation of flood-prone area designation of new lots at Watermark Estate, stages 10 to 12. Moved Councillor Mountainee. Seconded Councillor Nelson. Councillor Mountainee.
Madam Mayor, exactly the same as the previous item. This time it's the Watermark Estate, stages 10 and 12, better known as 520 to 540 Bowen Hedge Road, and I'd like to recommend that we revoke that designation.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson.
Nothing further, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Mountainee. Okay, I'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Okay, we need to now move into confidential for contractual matter number item 13. Can I please have a mover, Councillor Grisbeck, Councillor Aitken to second. Let's move into confidential. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Item 14, another contractual matter. Mover, Councillor Harwood. Seconder, Councillor Grisbeck. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Contractual matter item 15. Can I have a mover and seconder? I'll move it. Councillor Grisbeck second. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Okay, so we move into section C, notice of motion. From Councillor Mountainee.
To excuse myself at this point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Howard.
Thank you.
Now, we need a seconder. Who's happy to second Councillor Mountain's notice of motion? Councillor Nelson, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is a fairly straightforward matter. Some City of Greater Geelong ratepayers who have property north of Mountainee Road have been dragged into a Surf Coast Shire matter. I think we're talking less than 100 ratepayers. As you can read from the nomination, the Victorian State Government made an election promise to carry out an environmental program to protect the values of the Surf Coast and also the Ballerine. which is not the subject of this nomination. There was never any mention in that promise and with respect to the work regarding ratepayers or land in the municipality of the City of Greater Geelong. Early in the year, stage 1 of the program commenced and was completed without the involvement of the City of Greater Geelong landowners who were north of the Bellarine. Not only were they not involved, but they had no knowledge of. On the 17th September 2019, an area of land which subsequently included City of Greater Geelong ratepayers with land north of the Mountainee Road was included in a Surf Coast distinctive area program that was declared by the Governing Council on the 17th of September. All of this went ahead without the knowledge of or consultation with the City of Greater Geelong ratepayers who had this land north of Mountainee Road. Effectively, they got dragged into a program as an afterthought without any consultation. I asked myself the question, and you may well do the same, who would you have thought would have the most to offer in a development of a program of this nature? And clearly the answer to that question is the people who live there, the people who generally love the land on which they live and the land in question, and the people who have decided to live there and make that their home, whether it be the current generation or past generations. So, my fellow councillors, the area in question, north of Mountainee Road, already has adequate protection as a significant landscape through the implementation of the Armstrong Creek Urban Growth Boundary, which is contained in the Greater Geelong Planning Scheme, which includes the protection of the Thomson Valley settlement break, which is part of the land in question. So what we have here is not only a lack of consultation, but no consultation in the first stage. Our ratepayers have been put at a severe disadvantage, and what we're recommending is that we write to state government and to inform them that we're not in favour of that land being included in the program for the reasons set out in the nomination.
Councillor Mountainee. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be as quick as I possibly can. Certainly agree with everything Councillor Mountainee had said. When we went to a meeting that was convened by Council, yet was overtaken by the Department of Environment, Water, Land and Planning. Have I missed any? I think that's right, DELP. They were certainly running roughshod over the residents down there who weren't used to processes like what they were doing as a councillor. Certainly I'm used to getting my information in reports and reading media releases, and I understand that that DELP said, as Councillor Mountainee said, that DELP had said that this was part of a state government commitment, and it wasn't part of a state government commitment at all. The natural, as Councillor Mountainee said, the natural break for me is certainly Mountainee Road and the Thomson Valley, not icky-ocking through Mountainee and Whites Road and Bogans Lane. It's not where it's supposed to be. Anyone that lives there knows that. And we know that as councillors, but DELP didn't seem to want to know that. So this is requesting that the Mayor advise DELP and the state government that that's what our intentions are, to make that break where it should be, the break between the City of Greater Geelong and the Surf Coast Shire, and not some back streets through Mountainee, which aren't a natural break. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Nelson. Anybody else have any comments on this one? Put this one to the vote then. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Mountainee to close. Did you want to close, Pat?
No. I'll just make one further point. I think this is an opportunity for us to once again demonstrate that we really respect our ratepayers, that when they come to us and with a genuine concern, that, and I'm sure everyone around the table does the same thing, we listen and we show them the amount of respect that they deserve and why they put us here.
Thanks, Councillor Mountainee. Okay, I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you, carried. Okay, now we're going to move into past 10 o'clock, so I need to have somebody I'll move that we go past 10. Councillor Grisbeck, Deputy Mayor, will second. Those in favour to move past 10 o'clock? Thank you. Those against? No. Councillor Aitken? Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Nelson, you have an urgent business item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do you have a seconder? Oh, better get Bruce back, hadn't we?
Yeah, and we need...
Councillor Harwood. Yeah, do you have a second? Who's got a second? I'm happy to second your piece since I said... Unless someone else wants to. Yep, Councillor Mountainee will second. Great.
I'll just wait for Councillor Harwood because we need 2/3 of the vote to get it over, to be heard. Asleep.
We need to vote first to hear the urgent business. So you've moved and seconded. So all those in favour of hearing the urgent business? Those against? Oh, great, carried. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors, for something that I said I'd never do.
We're a forgiving bunch. True.
And only because, as an extension to what Councillor Mountainee said, I listened to my community and my constituents down in Armstrong Creek. Now, I did think, to my defence, I did think there was another council meeting this year, but I was told that there were no more council meetings. This was the last one. So this had to come tonight because of what I'm about to say. So the recommendation is that council considers as urgent business a motion considering the funding of a crossing supervisor at St Catherine's Catholic Primary School down in Armstrong Creek. It came to my attention last week that there was a Catholic school opening, a primary school opening, and it didn't have a school crossing supervisor. And the state member at the time was saying that it was a fault of council's. But the problem was, and that's okay, we all get whacked and we do it back, and that's the nature of the beast, I guess. But the problem for me was that it was on a closed post in Facebook. So unless you were part of that Facebook group, you didn't know about it. So that was pretty disappointing for me. Luckily, I was a member of that group. So this is why we are here tonight to discuss this. And it basically is to fund a school crossing supervisor, because the state government won't fund the school crossing supervisor because they need a traffic volume count are required to be undertaken before they will fund a school crossing supervisor. Now, because the school hasn't opened, they can't get a traffic count. And because they don't have a traffic count, they won't fund the school crossing supervisor. That's the truth, and that's what it is. So council has certainly I'll be working with officers and my fellow councillors to try and get this over the line, to fund a school crossing supervisor, and then once we get the traffic counts from Vic Roads, we'll certainly seek state government funding to compensate us for that crossing supervisor, which only costs around, I'm told, $20,000 a year. Yes, that's a significant amount of money, but in a $500 million budget, I don't think it's that much for us to fund. So I'm seeking your support as my fellow councillors. We already have committed to installing appropriate infrastructure there. We're building a Wombat crossing in the near future. But this notice of motion is to say that we are listening to the community and we are going to put a school crossing supervisor there, and then we'll seek the funds from the state government once we get those traffic counts. So I just wanted to reiterate the fact that this is council listening to its community and acting very, very, very quickly to get the school crossing supervisor up and running from day one, and not as the state government policy is to wait until there's a traffic count, because the safety of our community is number one for us. So certainly number one for me, and I'm sure it is for everyone else. So I'm seeking the support of my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor Mountainee.
I think Councillor Ron said it all, so I certainly endorse everything he's just mentioned. To add, I guess that because it's a developing community, we've got some roads down there that are made and some that aren't, and the ones that are made are carrying all the traffic, and you know, this is just an example of, I guess, a school in an area which is getting a lot of traffic. I think, from a safety perspective, this is a very worthwhile move for us to be making.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Mountainee. Anybody else have any comments on this one? Put the urgent notice of motion to the vote. Oh no, Councillor Nelson to close.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Not much further other than to say I'm happy to pose for a photo with the school crossing supervisor and the state government representative if he wants to join me down there in the funding announcement. So,
thank you. Okay, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Great. Those against?
Thank you for your support.
Carried.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay, Section D, Assembly of Council. Can I please have a mover and seconder for the Assembly of Council? Moved Councillor Mansfield, seconded Councillor Quintell. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Can I have a mover and seconder for the planning delegations? Mover Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Mason. All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Carried. And confidential. We need a mover and seconder to close the meeting to the public. Moved Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Nelson. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. That will be the end of the non-confidential section.
Merry Christmas.
Very much. Yes, Merry Christmas. See you in